So when I became the distributor for Fredenstein, the main thing that they were doing when I was involved with them was 500 series racks and 500 series modules. They had a few rack mount pieces, but the 500 series was the main thing. So when I got involved with them, I was trying to think of, well, how can I get attention, to this line, the 500 series thing. So first thing I did is I bought the name 500seriemodules.com, which I still have. And you can see there's a database there. It's just not current. And then I was thinking, when you get these 500 series racks and you link them all together, I mean, just in a rack, it operates like a console. You put top rack could be your mic praise. The second one could be your dynamics. The third one, could be EQs, and you can adjust them any way you want to. But if you just made a rack that looked like a console, I think that would increase the sales of it. So I was pretty good friends with Sterling Modular, the original owner, and I was running this idea by him, and he thought it was a great idea. And he made a unit for me to use at the Fredenstein booth. And I'll post pictures that you can see it. And it's really a nice design. And there's no electronics in it at all. All basically it is a rack, but just the way it's positioned, it looks like a console. And I'll also post the flyer he came out with all the information, the brochure that shows that you could expand on this and make it into a bigger console if you wanted to. And I mean, basically everything would come up to a patch bay, or you'd have them hardwired, and mic pre's go to, it's all wired one way. But it looked like a console, and a lot of people, they wanted that look. So I had him, he made the rack for me. We used it at a couple of AES shows, and then when we were done with it, he gave it to me. I still have it. It's beautifully done. There's new owners now at Sterling Modular, and I don't think this is a product they make, but I guess if enough people asked them, they probably would make it, because it looks great. So these are the pictures I have of the brochure and the pictures of the rack. And it's just kind of, when you're the distributor, you have to come up with creative ways of bringing focus to the product that you're handling. And this is the only way I could think of doing it, was creating a website, creating furniture that the 500 series would go. And I just kept on putting Fredenstein gear in there. Now I know, I think it was Tree Audio made a 500 series module console that had a monitor section and busing and all that, but they only made a few of them as far as I know. And I know Loop Trotter is another company that makes a 500 series console, and I think they still make them. They're out of Poland. And then there's this other company in England, Interphase, I think it is. But I think there's more of them. But it's an interesting way of creating your console. Just buy the modules, stick them in, and if you get tired of them, pull them out, put other modules in there. But this was a cheap way of doing it, getting that same kind of look in your studio and having the accessibility. So I'll post these, and there's the story about the 500 series Rex. So I saw this today. I love seeing 500 series modules and seeing consoles and housings that they're put in. And this was, I think, maybe 10 years ago or so. There was a company called Mana Modular. And I'll put a picture up of the console that they were proposing to come out with. But it never took off, and their website is down now. But this other one just showed up today. I just saw the video. Rodec. They're making a, I don't know if it's geared for live sound or DJ, or if it's for recording, but it looks like a 500 series mini console. I think it's between 6 and 10,000 euro. So it's a bit pricey, but it offers a bunch of features. I'll put the link in the description, and I'm gonna put up a bunch of pictures that I found on their website. But look at the two side by side, and I'd be interested if if the Mana engineers had anything to do with the Rodec, because it looks a lot alike, but it may not be. We'll see. But I thought I'd bring this to your attention and see what you guys think. I always love this kind of 500 series stuff. So I read in the comments today that, and I don't know if this person was pulling my leg or not, but he was like, the Digidesign 888 interface was such an incredible audio interface. And when that thing came out, you kind of have to remember, and I don't know if it's been a while, when you bought a Pro Tool systems back then, you bought the card, the interface, and the software. It was all bundled together. It's not like it is today that you could buy the software separately and pick out your audio interface. So you had to use the Digidesign interface that they gave you. And the 888, it was 8 inputs, 8 outputs, analog and AES EBU. So it was a versatile and had a lot of connections to it. But it sounded very thin and very harsh. And when I would take out Pro Tools to do demos and people would compare it to their tape machines, it was like, yeah, it's great that you can sync up to tape and you can take all the stuff off, but once you put it back, it doesn't sound the same. It's not right. So you didn't have the option to buy other interfaces. So when Apogee came out with their AD8000 audio interface, it was a big deal because what they did is they reverse engineered their audio interface to work with the Pro Tools card. And their converters sounded fantastic. But Digidesign did not give them the blessing to do this, so there was no support from them. I mean, at one point there was a little bit of support, but they decided not to endorse any third-party audio interfaces. I mean, one is a business decision. The other is if you start doing that, then you have to verify if they work, and you're kind of doing their tech support. So it's easier for them to just say we're not supporting it. But once that interface came out, I took that 88,000 to studios, and we would record through an 888 and then record through an 88,000. And it was day and night difference. I mean, not subtle, big difference. Like I said, the 888, very thin, very harsh. And then you would listen to the 88,000 and it was big and fat and round and very pleasant to listen to. But the 88,000 was not a cheap interface. I think it was around $6,000 for the interface. And but when I did a demo, and people that didn't have the budget, they would find the money because that interface sounded that good. And I was selling gobs of them. I mean, 10, 20 at a time, because studios would buy the 88,000, not just for Pro Tools, put them in front of an DA88, a Tascam machine, or put it in front of an Edac machine. So there were plenty of them, and the metering on them was really fantastic. They were really nice devices. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about that 888, but the other thing I wanted to say is there's a lot of times when you'll demo a piece of product that's maybe out of the person's price range, but as soon as they hear how good it sounds, they find the money. I remember when the KRK 703s came out, there were small speakers. They had that yellow cone and they had that inverted tweeter. And when you heard them, they sounded fantastic. They were a passive speaker. They had I think it was a 7-inch or a 6-inch woofer. But they were $900 for a pair. And people were still, buying NS10s back then. And I had them set up in the showroom that I'd have a pair of KRK 703s and the NS10s. And I would play through one speaker, then switch over to the other one. And big difference. And people they came in to buy, NS10s, the Yamahas. And they were about, I think, like $400 a pair or so. And, the KRK's at $900, big difference. But they found the money. So I guess the moral to this clip here is if you show people the right gear and how it can sound better, and they find value in that, they'll find the money to buy it. But this all started off with somebody saying how fantastic the 888 is, and no, it wasn't. I'm sorry. So people wanted to know about the Quested VS2108 and the Quested V2108. What were the differences and what was going on with those speakers? The Quested had at one point had made a speaker, and they still do. It's called the H108, and it's a passive two-way with an 8-inch woofer. And it was Roger Quested's answer to the NS10. And it's a very neutral sounding speaker. I sold a ton of them to mastering places and people doing classical and jazz music. It's a very, very neutral sounding speaker. He made that speaker. It did well, but some people wanted a little bit more bottom end, a little lower. So he came up with the 2108, which is a bigger cabinet, and he made it active. And that became the VS2108. And if you look at the pictures of it, the ports are on, I think, either the lower side or the upper side, because the difference between the 2108 and the V and the VS is where the ports are at. But there's also the VS2108. It costs a good amount of money to manufacture. The heat sinks on the back are aluminum, and they're pretty expensive to make. And Roger decided, let me just try redesigning the speaker. If I could make it cheaper but sound just as good or better, that's what he was going to do. And that's how he came out with the V2108. And that came out, I guess, around 2009 or 2010. The V series, the VS was before that. And they sold a bunch of them. Hans Zimmer, big Quested fan. Anybody that works in his production facility, I think it's called Control One, has to have the 2108s at least. So I think there's 28 pair over there now. And then in his personal room, he has the big, I think there are 415s or 412s. If you ever see his big room, they're all Questeds in there. But a lot of the guys that were composers for him that went off to do their own thing, they kept using the Questeds. But that was a big question people were asking. What's the difference between the VS2108, V2108? Difference is one was a little cheaper to make, but same sound quality or better. So I hope that helps some people out. One thing I did when I was doing the Pro Tools seminars working for Digidesign, I would have a Pro Tools rig that I would take with me, and it was two 12-space floating cases. They were SKB cases. And the reason they were so big, one of them I had an ADAT in there with an ADAT bridge, and then I would have my, I think like a 2CI back then. Maybe it was something bigger. But everything was loaded in these two flight cases. And I had this a dolly that was collapsible that I would put both cases on, and I drag them with me to the airport and check them in. And I don't think you could get that through security these days, or even get it on a plane anymore. But that's what I would do, is take those two big cases with me to every Pro Tools seminar that I was doing. And the ADAT took a lot of space, but it was kind of important at that point. I was showing the ADAT bridge, which was a really fantastic piece. You could hook it up. The ADAT bridge hooked up to your Pro Tools system as another audio interface, and it connected to your ADAT, and it'd sync up your ADAT. So you could take all the information off the ADAT, do your editing, and put it all back in, and it's all in sync perfectly. And you could control the tape transport. You could control the tape machine completely. And that was always something that I would show at the demos when I could get those systems out there. And people thought that was fascinating. I mean, it eventually went away. They don't make ADAT bridges anymore. I don't know when they stopped making them, but it was a fun piece to show. But the whole point of the story is two flight cases, floating flight cases, taking them and getting them onto the plane. And I would take it down to the wire too. I did find out it was always a good idea to get there a day ahead of time, just in case the plane didn't get there on time, because you only have one shot to to put these all together, these seminars, and it was important to make sure everything was fine. And Digidesign was fine with paying my hotel room a day early for me to get places to show the product. But you really, really had to hustle. So I did a video on the AES 2008, and I found these pictures. It was AES 2007 when I was the Quested distributor. And first picture here, the same speakers I had to the other one, the S6, S7, and S8. The S6 is the yellow one, the S7 is the blue one, and the S8 is the pinkish red one in the middle. And I think that Quested still makes the S8. Don't make the S6 or 7s anymore. And off to the left, that is the 3110, three-way with a 10-inch woofer in there. The next picture, that is the Quested booth. You can see Roger there. He's checking out I had some info about this Sigma Sound Direct box that I was making with Joe Tarsia. It's that little light blue box it's right in front of him. He just wanted to read and see what was going on. The next picture. Oh, this is the show that I had gotten these. They're twin Greek girls. They're musicians. Helena Maria. That's what they go by. They're actresses too, but they're incredible musicians and singers. They came to the show, and I got them to just wear Quested shirts and just be at the booth. So took a picture of Roger with them. He just looks, doesn't look happy, but he took the picture. Next one, that's the API booth that was actually across the way from where we were at. And then the next picture, I don't know, Adamson, I don't know why I took that picture, but it gives you a vibe of the AES shows back then were a lot bigger than what they are now. And the next picture, the booth that was actually next to us was the PMC monitors. And they were a lot more respectful about keeping their noise level down, and that the guy with the striped shirt in the middle, he's a kind of wild man. When we were breaking down our booths, he was just took his shirt off. He was bare shirt, and he didn't want a wrinkled shirt so he could take down the booth, which was it's kind of crazy. There's just a picture of the AES show. If you've been to the recent AES shows, they're not as big as they are, as they were. So, and next picture, those Quested monitors again. And here's the Quested booth. Funny thing about this one, on the right-hand side, those are all jars of licorice. So we get mango, and I think a cherry and apple. And I got them for people to come, maybe take a piece of licorice and sit down and talk with us. But what happened is people would just come to my booth and just take the licorice and eat it. And, just grab a handful and then just walk away. So they weren't talking to us at all. So all that licorice was gone within an hour. And nobody spent any time talking to us. So that thinking just did not work. And you can see the pictures in the background of some of the bigger Quested installs that we had done. And the next picture, that was the 3110s. That piece on the left-hand side, you can unscrew it and make it so the tweeters goes to the top of the speaker. So you can set them up horizontally or vertically. Those things, they have a 1,000-watt amplifier in there just for the woofer. And most people don't know about them. They do sound good. Next picture, this was you can see the Sigma Sound Direct box. That's what I sold with Joe Tarsia. We made 50 of them, new old stock with the transformers, exactly the way that Joe made his. And then we had the flyer there that has a picture of Sigma, the way it was. And then we had some literature for Quested. And the two cards there are Scott Ray and Eric Klein. I think Scott Ray is now the main person for doing the Quested product in the United States. He's out of California. There's another picture. You can see the Quested booth, and you can see Roger just talking to someone. Next picture, that is the API booth, and they had the 1608, and then they had the expansion, and I think they just introduced the expansion at that show. So this was 2007. And you can see on the right-hand side, the radar system. And next picture, that's a better shot of the expansion for the 1608. And then, oh, here's a picture of the Shadow Hill. From the top, you have the Shadow Hill 500 series modules. Then underneath it, you have the 4-channel mic pre. That I don't think they make it anymore, but that was that. And then underneath that is their big compressor. They still make that. And then underneath that is their 8-channel mic pre, and I think that's out of production. And then underneath that is the 2-channel mic pre with the summing mixer in there. So, and then, oh, this is a company that all they do is they make VU meters. And I thought that was very interesting. The one in the middle at the bottom, it looks, I think Doug Fern must be getting his from there because it looks exactly like the meters on the DW Fern equipment. And then, that's just another picture of the meters. And then there's another picture of the Shadow Hill gear. And I don't know who makes this microphone. It just looked very interesting. I'd like, before everybody got there, I'd like going around and just taking pictures of things. Sometimes you couldn't find out what they were. And then the next picture, La Chapelle. I think that's how you pronounce it. That is their 500 series mic pre, and it has vacuum tube pre. So it's 2 modules, and that makes sense. But there's single channel mic pre's with tubes in them too. Then here was the Neve console, the what is it? The 50. Oh, I forgot what it's called. It's probably their 5088, I think it's called. I don't know. But that was their console. It may have been the first year. I don't know if it was up there. Oh, 500 series spec modules, which is kind of interesting. That's them. Next picture, Tone Lux modules and SPL. They had their 500 series at Transient Designers at the show. And then this was, I think, SPL's attempt at making it's not a 500 series module rack. It's their version of a modular system. I don't know if it's in production anymore. Everything SPL makes, it just looks great, and it sounds really good. But this is what they had. They were showing at the show. And then we have, it was Brauner microphones. I did a video about Brauner, and I was at the Mercenary booth. Great microphones. Just if you talk to Dirk Brauner, just be prepared for him to be short with you. He's not a happy person. Telefunken had their Volkswagen van there. They usually bring it to all the shows. It's interesting. And then the next picture, shiny box. This is with everything lit up, and you can see that guillotine. That has a ton of LEDs in there. And I don't know how it works exactly, but it looks interesting. I don't know if they ever ship them, and I don't know what they sound like, but looks kind of interesting. The next picture is JLM. I see these things, but I never used one. Looked interesting. That looks like they make their 500 series rack and they make their modules. And then I think at one point they used to make studio monitors too. It's just a very interesting company, but I never found out a lot about them. Oh, this was a picture. No clue. It's some kind of a monitor controller. Sometimes I would just take a picture, and then when I got home, I could look it up and find out more about it. I don't know if it ever went into production or not. And the next picture is another. I don't even know how you say that, but that's their surround monitor system. And then this picture, there's a company that got in touch with me about being the distributor for their acoustic panels. I think they're out of Portugal. And I said, sure, yeah, I could be the distributor. And they never sent me pricing. They never sent me availability. They never sent me samples. Nothing. But when I said, sure, I'll be the distributor, they list me as the distributor. So I know nothing about the product line as far as pricing, availability, and that, but they just took my email saying that I'll be the distributor if you want me to. And they listed me everywhere. But it's very interesting looking stuff. I think it's made out of fiberglass. So here's the next picture of theirs. It's interesting, panels. Oh, this is Crockwood. Crockwood, I have a little bit of history with. In the early 90s, I got in touch with them, and I talked to the lady she was the wife of the owner. The owner's name is Crispin, I think. And we had a long conversation because they made this mic pre it looked like a bucket. And the mic pre was in the bucket. And the thinking was you could put the mic pre really close to the microphone. So you'd have it right by the mic stand and just have a really short mic cable, and then have a long cable going to your recorder. And I was really interested in the product line. It's just we couldn't make things happen for some reason. There was no representation in the United States. And I was talking to them in England, and I couldn't get them to send me a demo, or it's something we just couldn't make it work. But I've known about them for a long time, and they've been around for a long time. So, and the next picture, there's some more. That's their mic pre from Crockwood. And this is their monitor controller. And then the next picture, this is how do you say it? Thermionic Culture. It's all tube gear. Independent Audio is the distributor for them, and they're really great people at Independent Audio. Fraser Jones and his wife Jean. Every time we would see them at the show, Jean would give me a big hug, and Fraser's always so kind. And that's the kind of distributor you want. If you're interested in something, they'll send it right out. You can try it, and if you have any issues with it, they take care of it immediately. Just a great distributor. And they're not all that way, but they represent thermionic culture. So really nice product line. And the next picture is Blue. They always made some crazy designs. They had a designer from, I think they still have him, from Latvia. He was the main designer. And the other guy that owned the company, a guy from I think it was California, his name was Skip. And I was one of the first Blue microphone dealers after they had opened up the line. So I bought the whole line, and they make really nice microphones. Some are better than the others, and some are, they're good looking microphones, and that's that. I've even had that big bottle microphone. This was one of their mic pre's, the Robbie, and what was that? I think that the Woodpecker. I think that was the ribbon microphone thing, but I don't think they make those anymore. The next picture, Microtech Gefeld. That is such an excellent microphone company. And it's a pity because they don't get the exposure that other microphone companies do. They don't make flashy stuff. I mean, that's probably about their flashiest microphone that they make. But if you get it, it's so rich and big sounding. I had done a microphone shootout when I was over at Angel Mountain. We recorded piano and acoustic guitars, and we had all these different microphones. I did it with the cheapest microphones we had all the way up to the most expensive microphones, so you could hear everything. I got to find that and make a video and a link so you guys could hear it. Because when you listen to the Microtech Gefelds, they just sound so fat and natural sounding. Okay, so the next. This was a company called, Violet. And they're made in Latvia too, like the Blue microphones. And the designer the one was called Blue, and then this other guy started a company called Violet. So it was their competition. It's just kind of like Adam Speakers. Then one of the guys from Adam went and started his own company called Eve. So I don't know if many people get that. Here's another one of the Violet, booths. Okay, the next. There's another Violet microphone. think this was one of their early shows that they were at, so they were still a new company. I don't even know if they make them anymore. Another violet microphone. And then here's another violet microphone. And another violet. They were just fascinating to me. And then here's another violet microphone. Yeah, I just took a bunch of, so here's, and then the next, I have more violet microphones. It just looked all interesting to me. And then this, I think this is an Italian company. And I'm pretty sure those were 500 series modules that they just had a multi-purpose use. I don't know what they do exactly. I have to study them a little bit more, but it was something I saw and I said, all right, let me take a picture of this. Let's see, in the next picture, there's a company called Cascade. And I don't think they're around anymore because they changed their name, but a very interesting design. And then the last picture is, it's another picture of Cascade, just different lighting. So there you go. I hope you find this interesting. I thought I'd do something a little different today. I found a bunch of pictures from the AES show. This one is from 2008. And what I'd like to do when I'm at the AES show is sometimes I like to go before everybody gets there and just go around at the different booths. And if I see something interesting, just take a picture of it and kind of find out what was up with it later on. But so I'm just going to do some commentary on the different pictures I have. And this is from 2008. I was at the Quested booth. I was a distributor, and I was there with Roger Quested and my daughter, Kira. So first picture, you can see that's our booth. We have the yellow S7, the yellow S6, the blue S7, and the reddish S8 Quested. And at the bottom, you can see that's the S10 subwoofer. And my daughter's there with their yellow shoes, and Roger Quested standing in the back. Interesting thing about this picture, that was the corner booth that we had. And they put us right next to this company called Far, F-A-R, and it's a French company. And you can see in the background the size of the speakers that they had. And they had them so you could turn them on. And it was just annoying Roger to the nth degree. They kept turning on these speakers really loud. Our speakers were there for display, just to talk about them, even though you could use them, but they were just to talk about. But this, at the other booth, they would turn on the speakers and just blast them. And boy, it got Roger just annoyed. So that's the first picture. The second picture, this is kind of interesting, and I don't think this ever turned into a product. But back then, when the 500 series craze was really going on, a lot of these manufacturers thought, well, why don't I just come out with my own modular system and see if everybody will buy into that? Because there's limitations with the 500 series with the power supply. So TubeTech had made their own it's their own modular system, the equivalent of a 500 series, but they don't fit into a 500 series rack. But I took a picture of this. Like I said, I don't think it ever turned into a product, but it was kind of interesting that they were trying. So the next picture, here's another company. They had their modular system. It was by Audient. It was formerly the David Dearden, who had DDA, came up with Audient, the company. But this is their modular system, and you can see it's a bit taller than the 500 series. But I think I saw it on a price sheet one time. I don't know if they ever got into production. They may have, but I don't know if they still make them. But this is what their offering was. And then this company was called Shiny Box. And I really don't know much about them, but I saw them at a couple trade shows. I took a picture of them. I think they're made in China. I don't know for sure. I've never seen them in a studio, and I haven't seen any reviews about them. So I don't know if they actually went into production or not. But it was one of those interesting pieces because all those LEDs, they had that one EQ with a ton of LEDs in there. So I don't know if it actually turned into a product or not, but it was one of those things I saw. I took a picture of it. This rack was from Rolls. They had a tube module, and it was a 500 series module, and I think that did go into production. But putting a tube in that small of an area, and there's a lot of companies that do it now. It's just the power supply can be an issue, and you can see a Mercenary. I don't know if they were, it was at their booth or not, but it was a Rolls 500 series. So the next picture. Oh, to the left, that is Alta Moda. They made their 500 series modules. You can see in that wooden box. And then they had their Unicom, their compressor over there. But the guy who runs Alta Moda wasn't at the show. Someone else was there showing it. But it was, and this happens a lot where somebody just kind of gets a little piece of the booth to set up their gear, and they just stand there and talk about it, but they're not officially there. So you just kind of had to poke around until you saw it. But you could see it's at the Chameleon Labs booth. But that was it. And I think the next picture, yeah, here's a close-up shot. There's the Alta Moda, the Unicomp, and a great compressor. They don't make them anymore. The guy who makes the Alta Moda, his shop got burnt out, and then so he's in Hawaii, and he just doesn't have a shop to do anything anymore. So that's stopped production. And then he has his 500 series modules up on the top, which I don't know if they're making any of that stuff anymore. And then the next picture, oh, that's Purple with all their modules, which were pretty cool. They're local. They're in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and I've talked to the owner, a real nice guy, and just great gear. I think it was new back then. Here was, I think this was the Tree Audio 500 series console. You can see the Vintage King's cards there, so it's probably Vintage King was representing Tree Audio stuff. Very cool stuff, but I don't think they make the console anymore. It was a little involved and a bit pricey, but a nice piece. And the next picture, some more of the modules that were in the console. And then, this picture, you can see it's the master section. You can see the other 500 series modules, the Great River, and those pieces, they're double wide, some of those 500 series modules. So the next picture is, this was Shadow Hill. They had their modules there. That's one crazy company. They make great stuff, but if you ever go to their website, you have to kind of crack a code so you can get in, so you can see if there's any information on the stuff. It's almost like they don't want any customers, but really great stuff. The 500 series modules, I'm pretty sure they made it so you can go through different transformers to change the sound. And then the next picture, there is their big compressor that they're famous for. And then they have the 2-channel mic pre that's also a 32-channel summing mixer, but you have to have a load on every one of those 32 inputs for the summing mixer to work. And you know what my opinion is on summing mixers, but it's an extra. So you just buy the mic pre and you have a summing mixer thrown in on the deal. Okay, and next picture, that's just a wider shot, and that's where you can get those ProAct speakers. ProAct speakers back then, $1,800 for a pair. That's what they should go for. Now I see people trying to sell them for $4,000, but I don't think they make them anymore. So I don't know what you're doing, is buying new old stock or refurbished. This is just a picture of the Chandler stuff, which is also great gear. But I remember this is in 2008, so it may have been all new back then, but they had a pretty good product line. The next picture, this is it looks like another 500 series rack. I guess the modules I was taking a picture of. And the next picture, oh, that's the crane song. I think the egret was a new product back then. The 8-channel D to A converter. They always made great stuff. David Hill was a genius. A really nice guy too. This picture is the Drummer stuff, and they had the Mercenary edition, which I never understood why you would put another dealer's name on a product to sell, because that kind of prevents other dealers from selling it. So I didn't think that was the best marketing idea ever, to put a Mercenaries. I mean, I have nothing against Mercenary, but to put Mercenary name on a product, and then it's like selling I don't know, a McDonald's brand product at a Burger King. It's just not going to happen. But this was what they were offering, and then Drummer makes some interesting stuff. And then the next picture, this was the Empirical Labs with their offering. They had the 500 series modules, the de-essers, and then they had the Little Freak and the Fatso and their distressor. Just all really nice stuff. And the next picture, this is just a rack of the Empirical Lab 500 series modules. Let's see. And this was Burl Audio. They had their mic pre. And again, 2008, a lot of these companies were kind of new. So I don't know if it was brand new or not. This was new for API. They were offering, what was it called? It was made by API, but it was called something else. And this is their rack stuff. I don't know if they make them anymore, but they were new at the show there. Oh, some more 500 series. This was at the API booth, and API also bought ATI. That's that module at the bottom. So they were at their same booth, and then that's some more of the 500 series modules. And then we got into, I forgot what this company, Analog, I think it's called. They had their Fairchild clone at the AES show. And there's a bunch of them out now. This was just, I think it's at Arturia. It's called the Origin. It was a module. It looked interesting. I just took a picture of it. And this, it's an RCA mic pre. And the interesting thing about that, I saw this and I took a picture. I just love big VUs. But I think it was like maybe a few years later, Retro made their mic pre that looks almost exactly like this thing. So this one was an old mic pre that they modified to work. And the Retro, now you can buy their mic pre. It's a single channel mic pre that's as big as this unit. And it's a very, very interesting look. I think I have another picture. Yep. Here's another picture of the unit. It was just sitting randomly at a booth, and it just looks so interesting to me. Then we have more pictures of the Quested, a little better focus on the Quested monitors. And in the background, you can see the different studios that Quested products have been in. The next question. We were in San Francisco, and this was just my daughter found this outside, and she wanted to take a picture of her with it. And then here's a funny. You can see Roger. He's just all pissed off, and the guys next door at that far, and you can see it in red letters above their booth, just blasting their speakers, and all these people are standing there listening to it. And you should really do that at trade shows. And if you have speakers that big, you should probably have a private booth to show them in, because you play them loud and nobody can hear anybody else talking. But boy, look at the way Roger's standing. He is just not having it. So, and I think he went over there to talk to them. And there's another picture of Roger looking at that whole situation, going, "Oh, geez." Let's see here. Just another picture without Roger. You can see the booth, Quested booth with those far speakers. I don't even know if they're in business anymore. And this is a picture you can see behind the Quested booth. What was going on there. That guy in the middle there, that's the owner of the far speakers. The owner, or he was the sales manager, but he was the guy that we tried to talk to, and heavy French accent, but he's from France. Here's a picture of me and my daughter at the Quested booth. Just I think it was before the show started. And this last picture, my daughter found a big ear that she wanted to take a picture of. So there you go. There's a story about Alta Moda Audio. I think it's altamoda.com or altamodaaudio.com. And I forgot how I was introduced to them, but it's basically one guy, Paul Ricciuti. I think that's how you'd say his last name. And he lives out in Hawaii. And he used to have I think it was a multi-room SSL studio in LA. And he was supposed to be pretty successful, from what I understand. And he decided to move to Hawaii. I think his wife is Hawaiian. But I got introduced to him, and he had come out with this compressor called the Unicomp compressor. And I'll put pictures up, and it's really high quality, the build and the sound quality of this thing. And then, eventually he came out with his 500 series, his EQ and his pre and his compressor. All really good stuff. So we became kind of friendly socially over the phone. So I was calling him all the time. And he would tell me, interesting things about Hawaii. Because it always annoyed him that people would call like from Europe and think that he was laying out on a beach getting a tan. And he was just busting his butt trying to come out with new product because it was a one-man operation. And I remember one time I called him and we're talking and he says, wait a second. And I said, what's going on? He says, hold on. And then you hear him going, son of a, and you hear him put the phone down and he says, you get out of here. You don't belong here. Get out of here, you. And then he came back to the phone. He was all out of breath. And I go, what happened? He says, it's pigs. I said, what do you mean pigs? He said, no. He says, we have feral pigs all over the place in Hawaii. And he says, the thing about them, they're very smart. And he says, they would come onto his property and they would eat the bottom of his house. I guess it's made out of wood, and they would chew on it. And he says, he's tried all different ways to get rid of them. And constantly that he was having a problem with them. And I just thought it was funny. So me being a sensitive type, I found a hula dancing pig that was animated. It was a sculpture that was animated. And I sent it to him, and he thought that was funny. But we remained friends, and I sold a pretty good amount of his stuff. But at one point, he just kind of disappeared. And the funny thing is, I'm still listed on his website as the sole dealer and a distributor for the United States, but I don't know whatever happened to him. I mean, last time I talked to him, he was talking about making a taco lunch truck in Hawaii and doing that and doing the pro audio stuff. But he had all kind of great ideas for new product. He sent me the blueprints of what he was thinking of doing. And I think he opened up more dealers, but he just kind of vanished. But I thought that would be an interesting story, especially the pig story. I'm being funny, but it sounds like it's a big problem in Hawaii. So someone asked me today in the comments if I was an AMEC dealer when I was dealing with Tom Kiefer and selling him his console. And the answer is yes. And when I want to start my own company, Studio Logic Sound, I was in Pennsylvania and I couldn't become an AMEC dealer then. But my partner, Kurt Lehman, who ran Music City in Steubenville, Ohio, could. And I got a call one day from a studio in, it was upstate Pennsylvania. and they wanted to buy an AMEC big console. And I called Kurt and I said, if we can get this console, they will take it. So he got it shipped to him in Steubenville, Ohio. But I had to drive a van from Philadelphia to Steubenville, which is about 6 hours away, pick up the console, then drive it all the way up to upstate Pennsylvania. It's kind of right in the middle of the state up north, so not an easy way to get there. Drop it off there and then come home. So it was a big deal to do all this driving to make the sale happen, but we got to make it happen. I mean, some people will say, why don't you just ship it? Because then the profit gets eaten up, and shipping for a little store is not the same as what these big companies pay for shipping. So you end up paying a whole lot more, and that would have been a freight charge. So just throwing it in a van and having me drive over there was a lot cheaper than shipping it. But I made the whole deal happen. But boy, that was a lot of work to make close a deal. But you got to do these things if you want to make things come together. So that's my little story about selling an AMEC big console. And a name is deceptive, because if you look at an AMEC big console, it's not big at all. It's a tiny console, but it was called big. So it's kind of funny. This story is about selling Tom Kiefer's AMEC Angela console, I think it was, that I had originally sold to him. And it was in the basement of his house. That's where he had the studio. And he was going to be moving to Nashville, and he was disassembling things. And he said, let's sell the console. And I said, all right. And actually, Fred Curry from his band bought the console. But Fred, I think at that point, lived out in LA. So Fred had a friend of his that had a tractor trailer, but I needed to figure out how to get that console from the basement of Tom Kiefer's house to the point in this big parking lot so that this tractor trailer could pick it up. So this is when I was at Planet Medley, and I went around to like 5 guys at the music store, some of the guitar sales guys and drum sales guys, and I asked them, I said, if you guys come, if I can get 5 of you guys to come, I'll pay you $100 each to come and move this console. And this was a console you didn't disassemble. It's you could take the modules out of it, but it didn't break down into buckets like the SSLs and those consoles. So I got 5 guys, and they met me over at Tom's house, and we picked up the console, and it was down these stairs. So we had to pick it up, go all the way up these stairs, and it was like a curve. And then we had to get it out into a van. And then we had to drive the van to this parking lot and then meet this guy and then load it up into this tractor trailer so we could go out to California. But here's the kicker for the whole thing. Fred never paid me. So I was like, So I had these guys, looking at me the next day, saying, "Where's my money?" And I was like, "Yeah, he didn't pay me." And I said, "When I get paid, I'll pay you." And he never got around to paying me. And years and years and years later, I had told Tom, the situation. He says, "Oh, you got to get Fred to pay you." And I was backstage with Tom and the band Cinderella, and Tom kept on. He kept on kind of pushing me. He says, "Go over and talk to Fred. Go tell him he owes you that money. I want to hear what he's going to say." And I go, "I'm not going to do that." And he says, "Yeah, just go over there." And he kept, prodding me to do this. I go, No. You guys got a show to do. I'm not going to, do that. And he says, "Oh, come on, George." And I said, No. And I think it was a few years later, Fred had called me, and this is when I was selling the Apple computers at cost, because I did this whole other story. You can't make money selling Apple computers unless you get the marketing money. And I kind of mentioned to Fred, I said, "You never paid me that $500. And he said, "Oh, what was it for?" And I told him. He says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He says, "You know what? I'll tack on $500 to the sale, and I'll pay you right now." So he did eventually pay me, but it was like years and years and years later. I didn't know where the guys went to that helped me move the console. So, I just, put it in my pocket. But it was funny how Tom was just pushing me to tell Fred about it. But it was a funny, weird story. But that's how I sold. Well, I don't even have sold it. I arranged for it to be picked up. But that's some of these deals that you do in pro audio. You have to make it all happen. Somebody from Switzerland just asked me if I had any stories about API. And I used to be an API dealer, and I sold a decent amount. But I remember when we were at Angel Mountain, we took on this new line called Old School Audio that made 500 series modules and made 500 series racks. And in our advertising, I think online, we said, they have that API sound. And API got in touch with us, and they were so pissed off that they cut us off as a dealer. They said, you can't say things sound like API. I go, well, it's just something that has that kind of API-ish. They were so mad they said, nope. And ever since then, I've been chasing them to make me an API dealer. I did sell an API 1608 console, but I had to get it from another dealer, and we split the commission and that. But the only time I really made some money from API, there was a studio down in Delaware, and I found out that they were looking to buy an API, and I got in touch with API, and they said they would give me a finder's fee if the console sold, and they did. People bought it was a 32 channel 1608, and after the order went through and that I found out that the sale went through, I called up API and I said, you guys said you give me a finder's fee, and they said, yeah, we'll send you a finder's fee. I said, well, instead of that, why don't you just make me a dealer, and maybe give me a couple pieces of gear or something like that that's equivalent to that, or just make me a dealer. And they said no. They said, well, we'd rather send you a commission check than make you a dealer. And it's always annoyed me, those guys, that they did that. They just and they saw me at the AES shows, and they would be at like the booth across the way from Quested. And I'd go and talk to Mark Seaman. He was the national sales manager. And every time I would talk to him, he said, George, you're a great guy. We know you, we really like you, but no, we're not going to make you a dealer. And there was no dealers in my territory to begin with. So it was just kind of a personal thing. And it always bothered me. And I own API 500. No, I own 500seriesmodules.com, which is the website, and 500seriesmodules on Facebook. So I've always promoted the 500 series modules. I did that because of Fredenstein, but it also helped them out. But it was a personal thing they had with me, and I never understood why. And the only thing is, they were just touchy. So there's my API story. I think they make great product. They're just a touchy company. So there you go. I was just reading in the comments, someone was asking me if I ever used an Apogee Symphony interface. And the quick answer is no, I've never used one. But there's a longer backstory to that. I used to sell a ton of Apogee product, the 88,000s. They sold a bunch of those units. I mean, we'd had stacks and stacks of them at the store, and I had them flying out the door because they just sounded great. But there was a time when they made the 88,000 and then the Symphony, and it took a long time before they came out with the Symphony. And in between, they had some other products that it just wasn't selling too good. And I was kind of waiting for them to come out with a replacement for the 88,000. And it was taking a long time. And in the meantime, I had a really good relationship with Apogee. And at one point, they had asked me about creating a new product. They were basically going to do their own version of a UAD with plugins and that. And I thought that was a great idea. And they ran it by me, and I thought that was fantastic. So I was kind of almost involved on a different level with Apogee. And I always thought that was great. But at a certain point, they hired a new sales manager, and they came out with the Symphony, the first one. And I said, okay, I want to get involved with this. And they said, no, you can't be a dealer. I said, but I sold all this stuff. And he said, no, you haven't been selling like we would like you to be selling. So they had stuff that it wasn't selling. It just wasn't moving. And they said, no, we're going to hold another dealer network and you're not included. And I said, but I'll buy into whatever you need. Nope, we don't want you. And it was basically that. They slammed the door in my face. He said, no, we don't want you. And I said, okay. So then didn't sell any Apogee, never got one in. And I really didn't have anything to do with them. And I think it was a year or so went by, and they got back in touch with me, and they found out that their whole way of doing business wasn't working for them. And they asked me if I'd like to get involved with the line. And at that point, I was pretty bitter. And I said, no, I don't really need it. I'm fine with what I'm doing. And then I created with Mike Tarsia the Philadelphia Recording Community, which was a monthly get-together of recording studios in the Philadelphia area. And Mike would talk about the industry, and I would bring product lines to show. And every month we had at least 60 people there, sometimes even more. And Apogee heard about this, and actually we had some national write-ups. Mike did an interview, I did an interview about what we were doing, and it was kind of like a grassroots thing, and people were interested in that. But Apogee got in touch with me, and they had a new rep, and it was a girl, I forgot her name. But she was like, "Oh, George, it would be great if we could get our Apogee stuff in front of." And I said, "No, you guys treated me so badly. There's no point in me, bringing in a line to show it to all these clients." So I just told them no, and I left it at that. And to this day, I really don't sell Apogee at all, and I don't think I'm the only dealer they did that to. That they kind of shut the door and said, "No, we're only going to sell through these other dealers." And it doesn't matter how much product you sold in the past. We're not doing anything anymore. And I thought that was a very bad business decision on their part. So when someone asked me, have you ever heard of this? Oh, I would love to have heard it. And I would love to have got my hands on it. But the politics in the background made it so I couldn't do anything. And it wasn't my fault. It just, they hired a new sales manager. And I don't even think he's there anymore. I think he did such a bad job, they let him go. But there's my long answer of, have you used an Apogee Symphony? As a pro audio dealer, I'm always looking for new gear to get involved with, something that I could break into the market. And I've done it with a few lines. I got Fredenstein, I introduced that to the market, and they're doing well now. And I got Quested going, kind of, sort of. I mean, they're doing great for the time being. So I'm always, and I think every pro audio dealer does the same thing. You just look for new and interesting lines. And I came across this line, Aora. I think it was in like 2015 or so. And I saw a picture of this thing, and I reached out to the company right away. They were in England. And I talked to Ronald, who was the guy who designed and manufactured this thing. And basically what it is they make a tube mic pre and a tube EQ that's recallable through software, but also it's digitally controlled. And it's really high quality stuff made here. But the thing about this is it was a one-man operation. So one guy was trying to do all his marketing and sales, and you'll see what I did is I found a video. This is the only video I could find of him talking about his product at the NAMM show. And he's not the best spokesperson for a product. And the video, I grabbed this and I cleaned it up because you couldn't even tell what he was saying. And that was the only marketing that he had, other than he put an ad out in NAMM magazine, or NAMM, I don't know what they do. So the first picture, you see the preamp, and I think it's called the Grandiose. And then you see a picture of the front and the back of it. And then the third picture here is the Behemoth, which is their their EQ that they make that's controlled through digital. But the point that I'm trying to make here is sometimes somebody has an idea, they come up with this great design, they execute it, they make everything, and then when it comes down to sales and marketing, they're just not the best person to do that. And that's why finding a distributor or pro audio dealer is the best thing, because they know how to present it and show it off and make all the points. The designers, a lot of times, they take for granted that you know about the product or you have a good understanding of what it is. And sometimes you have to approach the public as they've never seen this thing before. What makes it so special? And that's what would make my job so special about introducing product to people and explaining to them what are cool and unique features of it, and also the features that it included. And I felt really bad for this guy. I kept calling him and saying, if there's anything I can do to help, just get it out into the marketplace. I wasn't really looking to be the distributor, but if I can make a couple bucks, it's great. But if I didn't, that's all right. And we talked a bunch of times on the phone, and he's a nice guy, but he just couldn't make it happen. And I looked him up. It looks like the company has been dissolved, and I don't even know if anybody ever bought one of these things, because I don't know if there was ever a dealer network set up. So you'll see the video at the end. You see him talking, and that's the other big mistake he did. He spent all his money to get out to the damn show, and he didn't have the gear hooked up at all. And granted, I know trade shows are not the best place to listen to things, but if you give people the opportunity to put some headphones on and twist some knobs and just get a feel for it, but not giving it any consideration, I think that was kind of a mistake on his part. And he probably should have done some demos at some big recording studios while he was out in LA to show off the product. But you can see his presentation, it really doesn't sell you on the product. And if you heard all the noise in the background that it originally had, you could barely make out what he's saying. So I thought this would be interesting. Cool looking product. It would have been nice if it was put into production. Oh, by the way, the price on the mic pre when he was out, he wanted $5,000 for a stereo mic pre, and he wanted $12,000 for the EQ, which it's pricey, but it's not crazy pricing considering the people that would buy it. Like, I'm thinking mastering places would go for the EQ. But there you go.
Hi there, I'm Ronald from Aora Audio, and we're here at the DAM show, and we're going to show you our products that we've been developing for a while, 3 years now. This Fredenstein equalizer is all analog audio, but the front end is all controlled digitally. So you can, it's an enhanced voltage. You can 3 different ranges and frequencies you can control, and they will switch via relays, and will switch all the analog circuitry in the back, all the passive components. Then you found a setting you want for your mastering, and then you can record it anytime. You can save it and record it anytime. The beauty of using relays for all the analog circuitry is that you get reliability overall. So all these units come with 8-year warranty, but they've been designed to last for 30 plus years. So on top of that, you are allowed to control through Ethernet the unit from your Mac or PC. You can obviously customize the displays with your logos or any information you want. So we'll hope that this will become the new standard for gear, 2 gear for the 21st century in the digital world.
This is more of a commentary than a story, but something I kind of I've been watching going on. When I was putting studios together, to set up a room, with a pair of monitors, if the monitors were small enough, you just had to deal with what you're hearing from the monitors. You weren't too concerned with the room because it was so close range, but you still wanted some sound treatment. And as the monitors got bigger, the room was in play. So when you had them soffit mounted or big freestanding, you had to consider the room because it was part of the sound. So it just seemed everybody was always working hard to get those two monitors to sound good in the room, to get the acoustics right, to get the treatment right, to get the bass traps right, all that kind of stuff. And then I start seeing monitors coming out. They saw like barefoot monitors when they first came out, and they had the woofers on their sides. And I was like, well, that's crazy. You got sound coming from different directions. So how do you deal with that? So, well, they got popular. People were using them. So I guess they got around that problem, or they didn't. I don't know. But you still have to calibrate the rooms. And then we came out with 5.1. And I remember Angel Mountain, we went into that heavy. We had the A room with the 412s, 5 of them with two 18-inch subs. And then we had the B room with two 12s, 5 of them, with the subs. And then we had the C room. All the rooms were in surround. And we had over $500,000 in speakers. And that was a dealer cost in that facility for all the surround work we were supposed to do. And the record companies were jumping on board and they said, okay, let's remix our stuff in surround. And, it was kind of a production line. And, that's how we got, I think it was Universal Mastering or I think that's what their name was. So we would get their mixes, we would get the multi-tracks, and then we would do a surround mix. And, it was assigned to whoever the engineer, was. And it wasn't assigned to the original engineer. But, we had to calibrate the room for those 5 speakers. And I remember Roger Quested came in and calibrated all the rooms. Now we got Atmos. So we're beyond the 5 speakers with the 1. We're into at least 7 speakers around you, 4 speakers above you, and a subwoofer. And I just don't understand, how are they calibrating those rooms? I know Genelec has a system where you put a microphone and it sends out the tones and it calibrates the rooms, but most people aren't spending the money to get into the Genelecs, which they're fantastic speakers, but most speakers. I watched who was that guy? Produced Like a Pro. He had these what were they? Some really inexpensive speakers, and they set them all up in the room, and that was their. They put the 4 above you and the 7 around you in the subwoofer. And he says, okay, yeah, this sounds fantastic. How are they calibrating the room? And then, the room comes into play. So the room has to be a pretty good built room. So I don't know how they're doing this. And then on top of that, once you have your Atmos mix done, where do you hear it? I hear a lot of people say, well, you just get special headphones. Well, what if you don't like headphones? I'm not a big fan of headphones. You just want to listen to them at home. They said, well, you can listen to it in your car. I go, well, they said 5.1 was going to take off when in your car, and that never happened. So how is Atmos going to be any better than that? So it just seems very odd to me. And then the other thing, I saw an article, Bob Clearmountain, they were interviewing him, I don't know, it was a year ago or so. And he made a really good point. He says, all these classic records that are being remixed in Atmos are being done without the approval of the artists. And the artists, they're not just the artists. They don't just, create the music, but they have a final say in what should be released. And here we go with engineers that have no connection to the artists at all, or haven't been able to talk to them, or they've passed on, and they're doing these Atmos mixes and releasing them. And I understand it's for the record companies or whoever owns the rights to the music to make more money, but I don't know if it's the right thing to be doing. I remember I had one car and it had a Lexicon processor in it. That you just hit this button and it sounded like the mix was totally different in the car and sounded really, really good in the car. And I just thought, maybe some kind of processing like that would be good. But I guess the bottom line is it was hard enough making two speakers sound right in a room and getting the mixes right. Then they went to 5.1. Now they're at 7.4.1. And I don't know where it's going to end. And I don't understand why. Well, I understand why they're doing it. It's all money based. But, I sold Serban's partner his system that is, the Genelec, the smaller speakers all around him. And he got the big Genelecs to check his mixes. And he's a fantastic mixer. And he's getting the mixes done. But it's still, you kind of have to question if the artist should be, involved. And that was one thing that Bob Clearmountain said. He would mix an Atmos. He would do an Atmos mix for a client for free, just to make sure that the client got the Atmos mix that they were supposed to. And he offered that, and I thought that was very generous of him because his time has to be very valuable. So I guess the whole thing here is it was hard enough getting two speakers. Then we went to 5. Then we went to 7.4.1. It just seems it's crazy. And the final product, they're telling you to listen through headphones, that's even crazier. So that's my commentary for the day. I mean, it may make some people crazy, but that's just I'm just trying to think out loud. This is kind of an interesting topic, and I don't really understand what's going on. But when you hire George Osberger to design your room, and we had hired him at Sigma. I think he did the A room in 1980, and that room was done really well. He also did the Hooters studio at Elm Street Studios, and he designs the whole room, but he also sells you the designs to make his Osberger speakers, and he tells you what drivers to get and the crossovers and all the gear that you need to make those speakers work. So there never was you bought an Osberger speaker, you bought the plans for it, and you had them assembled and you had them installed. But now I'm seeing that there's not just one. I think there's 2 companies that they're saying they're selling Osberger speakers, and they have that Osberger look to them. But I was always under the impression you just bought the plans, you made them yourself, and those were your Osberger speakers. And really, because they were so big, you really needed Osberger to design your room for them to sound right. So just getting the speakers by themselves, I mean, with double 15s and the horn, even with all the right parts in it, the room has to be designed properly. But I saw a couple companies doing that, and I don't know who owns the rights to the name, but it just seems a little odd to me that somebody's doing that right now. So there you go. That's my little topic. Somebody wanted me to talk about Avalon. They were asking specifically about the VT737. And I remember in 1997, I was over at Medley. I was just starting their Planet Medley, the pro audio department for them. I had just left Digidesign. And this was a product that was just getting introduced. And I checked it out, and it looked interesting as a channel strip. The mic pre, compressor EQ, all in one, and you could switch the order of, I'm pretty sure, you could switch the order of the EQ and the compressor. But it was built like a tank, and it really looked great. They sounded okay, but they sold like hotcakes. So we sold a ton of those things. And it was designed by this Australian guy. He's a Greek-Australian, big burly guy, and he just hated the world. Dealing with him, he was always angry. But I became a dealer for Avalon when that became available. I talked to him, and it was something like an $18,000 buy-in, and I bought a little everything. I got the 2055, the 2077, I got the 2022. The 2022 mic pre's are fantastic, those mic pre's. And then we got the U5s, the direct boxes. So I got a little of everything in, and I think it was like 18,000 was the buy-in. It may have been more. And he said, okay, you're exclusive. And I remember it didn't take long for him to open up Washington Professional. And I called him and he said, well, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, which made no sense to me at all. But I said, all right, fine. So we got them in, and the VT 737s, they came out with all kind of variations. I think they had the purple knobs first, and then they had the aluminum knobs or the stainless steel knobs, and then they came out with I think it was the Mercenary Edition, and they were all different variations of the same thing, and I don't think there was much of a difference between all of them, but they sold very well. They were priced at the right price point, and what this guy did is he made the housings just built like tanks. But sound quality wise, the mic pre's, there are better ones out there. But having it all in one package, that was kind of a really nice thing for a lot of people. They just kind of gravitated toward it, and they understood how to use it. And I remember, I forgot the guy's name in Australia, but his partner's name was Konstantin Psorakis. He was a great guy. He went by the name of Khan. And he came out to see me in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. And he showed me the 2055, which I think was the EQ. And we had the 2077, I think was the compressor. And then we went out to dinner, and, we became really good friends. Me being Greek, him Greek, we, inside jokes, that kind of stuff. But we always kept in touch. And he would always check up on me to see how things were going. But one thing I remember with Avalon, they never really designed anything new. It's kind of like they did that. They sold a ton of them. They did variations of them. And then I think it went for like 10 years. Nothing happened. And then they came out with like black versions of their, U5s with blue lights in them. And then I think they got rid of all sales in the United States. And they just had a repair center, and you couldn't call them. You had to email them and send your stuff out there to get repaired. And it just like slowly, the guy who did all the design work, and he, like I said, brilliant designer, he wasn't designing anymore. And I think there were some other external problems going on that he had to resolve. But I mean, come on, it was, I think we're talking about 20, 30 years now, and he hasn't designed anything new, and they still sell. But if you need them repaired, it's a little bit of a pain. But the one side note about this, Khan, he knew I was good friends with Walter Becker, and I told him I was going up to Walter's house, and he said, tell Walter, if they're coming through Australia, we got to go out and get some Greek food. And I was like, okay. And a lot of people tell me to say things to celebrities, and I kind of weigh it out if it's worth saying. But we were I was up at Walter's apartment, and it was quiet. And I said, Khan told me that if you guys are going through Australia, look him up, because he wants to go out to dinner with you with Greek food. And Walter's face just lit up. He's like, oh, tell Khan I'm there. Tell him I'm we're going out there. And he says, I'll go to Australia just for the food. He said, tell him, yeah, we're going to do it. So evidently they knew each other. So it was kind of an interesting thing. But Khan was always involved with all kind of pro audio stuff out in Australia. So that's my involvement with Avalon. I don't know where you buy them now. I guess you can get them from Sweetwater. But if you need repair work, just be careful. Like the older stuff is really, really nice. The 2055s, the 77s, the 2022s. I love that mic pre. That was really nice. But there you go. That's what I know about Avalon. This is something that I don't know if people understand this or not, but when Digidesign made their audio interfaces at the beginning, their audio interfaces would only work with their cards, and vice versa. It was a locked-in system. And then they got to the point where other interfaces could work, but Digidesign or Avid at that point didn't approve any of these interfaces. The spec was there and they could make their interfaces work, but they didn't approve it just so they didn't have to do any tech support. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand is Avid or Digidesign, they could change the spec on their audio interfaces. So how the card would hook up to the audio interfaces whenever they wanted to. So whenever they did an update to Pro Tools, they could change the spec there. Now, what that does is it would make whatever audio interface that you have, if it's not an Avid or Digidesign audio interface, not work. And that happened I remember with Apogee. They had their, I think it was their Symphony interface. They changed the spec and the audio interface didn't work for a little while. I don't think it was long. I think maybe it was a week or so, but it did interrupt a lot of studios. So that was the one thing that I was trying to explain to people. If you're buying a third-party interface, just have that in the back of your mind. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it can happen that they can change a spec, and there's nothing that Avid will do to make your audio interface. So if you're using Apogee or Antelope or any of those third-party interfaces, you just have to be careful about that kind of stuff. So that's something I wanted to point out to people, that they don't realize that is out there and lingering, and it could happen. If Avid wants to change a spec on something, they can do that. So there you go. When I was the distributor for Quested, one of the things that was part of my job was to set up the dealer network. And one of the things I did, and I was very aggressive about this, is I came up with a spiff program for the sales guys. And I was giving away 50% of the profit that I would make as a distributor. So when a salesperson sold it at regular price, whatever they, 20% over cost or list or whatever they wanted to sell it for, and then they send me the paperwork of who they sold it to, I would give them, I'd send them a check directly. And with some dealers, it worked out okay. But I remember with Vintage King, they had me do a video conference with them to explain the whole Quested line. And I was willing to send them speakers for them to demo and that. And nothing was happening. They didn't sell one single pair of speakers. And with the spiff program, I figured something would happen. And I was talking to Mike Nero one time, and I said, how do you guys sell so many barefoot monitors? I mean, it's just incredible. And he said, well, they were exclusive at that point. And part of the reason that they were exclusive is they were part owners in the speaker company. So they got it cheaper than anybody else, but there was nobody else to sell it. So they were pushing the line, and any lead that came in, they would push that speaker line. And after they exhausted all that, then they started opening up dealers, and then they were still making money, being the distributor selling to dealers. And it always seemed odd to me that there were so many barefoot monitors out there, and they're okay sounding speakers. I wouldn't say they were fantastic, and I always thought it was a crazy design. They had speakers pointing in different directions. They have the woofers on the sides, on each side, pointing in different directions. So I've said this before, it's hard enough setting up a room with the speakers facing you. Having them face in different directions is a whole other can of worms. But the thing that I didn't know that Mike had told me is they were part owners of the company, and it wasn't public knowledge. And now he told me that like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, something like that. So they were doing pretty good, and it kind of almost explains to me how that speaker got into so many studios when no one ever heard of it, and Vintage King was pushing them like crazy. And I don't know if they did this for sure, but I suspected it. A lot of leads that would come in, they would also, maybe they didn't push the line, but they made it available and made the deal very attractive. So interesting way that Vintage King was doing some business. So somebody was asking me about Blue Sky speakers because I made a comment in another video about them, how they're not great speakers at all. And I should give you some backstory on them. And it all starts off with Chris Fischera. Chris Fischera is a good friend of mine. I've known him since the TechCom days. He used to be the DDA rep, and I sold a couple DDA consoles. And then when I moved to, I think it was Medley, he brought me the Brauner Valvet, and I sold a ton of them, those microphones. And then he brought me Sound Deluxe microphones, and I did very good by him. And he's always I really trusted his opinion. And when I got involved in Quested, I talked to him about that, and he says, I think it's a good line. You should get involved with it. And he had nothing to do with the line. So I've known him for a long, long time. He's from the area that I'm in right now. He lives out in California. But he started Blue Sky. Also, Chris was half of Group 1 marketing, which is kind of a rep firm, and they handled a bunch of big lines. But he started with, I think, another guy, Blue Sky Speakers. And I remember him bringing me the 2.1 system, which was novel at the time, that you sold 2 speakers with the subwoofer as a package. And they were very reasonable, and I listened to them, and they were okay. They didn't knock me out, but Chris is a good friend, so I was going to try as hard as I could to sell them. And then they had their 5.1 system, and then they had the controller. And I bought for myself a 5.1 system, and I sold a bunch of them. I'm pretty sure I sold one to Serban. I sold a 5.1 system to Bon Jovi, and everybody, this was based on my enthusiasm, and the price was so reasonable. They bought them, but what they found out later is they didn't sound good. What the Bon Jovi, and I think Serban was using them this way too, is they were setting them up as a 5.1 system, but just using them for positioning the instruments, not for mixing, because the mixes were not coming out right. So that's how I sold a bunch of them, and even the ones I had, I couldn't take them. They just sounded like I was mixing with earmuffs on. I just couldn't hear what was going on. It was just very, it wasn't predictable what I wanted out of them. So I gave mine away. I gave them to my sister, and I gave them to some other people. I couldn't even sell them. Now this is all early 2000. I haven't sold any since then. So here we are 20 years later. I don't know what they sound like now, but I'm going by when I sold the 2.1 and the 5.1 systems, and with their controllers back then. I know they tried to get into bigger monitors. That didn't work out too good because they never completed the bigger monitors. Now, I know they have some tiny monitors, but I never really paid attention to small, tiny monitors, because bottom line, tiny monitors are tiny monitors. They're not gonna do what the bigger monitors do. The bigger monitors just give you more. So somebody wanted my opinion. There you go. I wouldn't recommend them. If you find them cheap, I still would stay away from them. I'm sorry, and you got to consider Chris Fisher is a good friend of mine, and I would do anything to help him out, but I just can't endorse or tell people to try those speakers out. So there you go. Every so often, a rep brings in a product to show you as a dealer, and they all hype their stuff up of how great it is, and they all want you to just buy it. But every so often, there's one product that they bring in that you just can't get enough of them, and nobody's ever heard of it, and you just kind of put it out in the field, and one after another, they just kind of keep on selling. So I want to do a little series on products that were home runs for me. And the first one I wanted to do was this microphone called, it's made by a company called Brauner, and the microphone was the Velvet. And when I got it, I think dealer cost was like $1,700, and it's like lists for about $2,600. So I think we sold for about $2,500. But this microphone, no one ever heard of it. This was back in '99. I think that's when the company started, or that's when I got that microphone. And I just got it out in the field. I'd got a microphone and thought I'd take a chance on it. I'd give it to somebody and say, "Here, take this and try it." And then they'd call me right back and go, "I'm buying it. How much is it?" And it's really hard to find a microphone that people don't have. Especially the big studios, they got pretty much everything covered. But to find something that they've never heard of that complements what they have is very hard. But this Brauner Velvet, I ended up selling, I think, about 40 or 50 of them, right away. I mean, really quickly. One of them I sold to Eric Bazillion, and he used it for the Amanda Marshall album that he did there. So if you want to hear the sound quality, her voice was totally done with this Velvet microphone. Eric had a studio in the back of his house, his carriage house, and I remember stopping by, and I met Amanda Marshall. She's just a small girl, curly blonde hair, very soft spoken. She's Canadian, but my God, what a voice that she had! And they used the Velvet for that, and it seemed like the people that were buying the Velvet were using it on the female voice, and they felt it worked best there. So, like I said, sold a lot of them, did very well, made good money. And then I went to a trade show, and Dirk Brauner, he's the owner of the company, big German guy. They had all the dealers meet with him before the AES show. This was up in New York. And I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, Dirk." Told my name and what I've been doing. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I know who you are." And that was it. And he just dismissed me. Didn't pat me on the back or say, "Hey, you're doing a great job," or "Great, whatever we can do to help you out." He just kind of dismissed me right away. So I was like, "Oh my God, just kind of a jerk of a person." But you know what? Sometimes those kind of people, just let them design stuff and get it to the sales and marketing people. Don't let them talk to the public. And I find there's a lot of those products where these guys do not talk to them. Just let them design stuff. They just don't have any social skills. But so this video was basically to talk about the Brauner Velvet and how great a microphone it was. I don't know if they make them anymore. I know the company's still in business. I just went to the website, and it hasn't been updated in a long time, but I can see that Brauner's Dirk is putting information on there. So there has to be dealers in places. But great microphone. If you have extra money, that's a very fantastic microphone, the Velvet. So this is a story that came to mind. I almost forgot about it, but when I had my Trident Vector console, and then I decided to sell it, I sold it to a guy who runs, his name's Kostaden. He runs Mozart Studios in New Jersey, and he took it apart, made it work perfectly. But at the same time, I sold it to him, and he was happy with it. I got another client of mine, Andrea Valentini, who now has T-Deck Sound, and he wanted me to find another Trident Vector console because him and Kostaden became good friends, and he thought it would be good. Both studios have the same console; they can interchange. And so I did some searching around, and I found a Trident Vector in the Northeast that was for sale, and I think the guy wanted like $18,000 for it, and I got Kostaden hooked up with him to buy it, but I told him 18,000 was just too much. He should be paying, I think, around 12 or 10 or so. So the guy wasn't really happy that I told Andrea to pay less for it. But at the same point, he wanted to thank me for making the connection because he was selling a console that he couldn't sell. And from my understanding, had new power supplies, and it was gone over, and it was in really good shape. So what he proposed is, he says, if you can make this deal happen, I'm going to send you a piece of gear. This guy owned a company called Charter Oak Audio, and I think they're out of business now. I did see their Facebook page, but if you go to their website, it's not there anymore. So I said, all right, I was just hooking you guys up, and I'll make money, off other things. But he said, I want to send it to you as a thank you. And I go, well, that's very nice. So the deal went through. Andrea got the console. It was good shape. Kostaden helped him install it. And then I got a package in the mail from Charter Oak. And I go, well, this is nice. He sent me a compressor. So I open up the package, and it looks like a used piece, and it has like a cracked display. And I called up the guy, and I said, well, I mean, it's nice that you sent this to me, but just sent me an old used piece that doesn't look like it's in the best condition. He says, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that." And nothing, he never followed up on it. So I ended up with a, used piece that was kind of beat. And I tried to sell it, and I sent it to a bunch of people, and nobody was jumping up and down on it, saying, "Yeah, this is fantastic." So I didn't have a home run piece here. So I think I eventually put it on eBay and sold it for whatever I could get for it. But the thing is, part of the story is, if you're going to thank somebody, be nice about it. Thank them with something that they would appreciate to get, not something that they don't want. It reminds me of the studio designers I worked with. They thanked me by sending me a check as a commission. I didn't ask for it, but they said, "Here's a thank you. We really appreciate what you did." And I went to go cash it, and the check bounced. And then when I got in touch with them, I said, "Well, thank you for sending me the check, but the check bounced." And then they got mad at me. I said, "Well, maybe just don't send me anything at all, and we wouldn't have this discussion." But so that's this kind of Trident Charter Oak story. It's kind of weird. I just think if you're going to thank somebody, do the right thing, So there you go. So I wanted to talk about this picture. It's kind of an interesting thing. I sold it to the singer from Clap Your Hands and Say Yeah. His name's Alex. And he bought this beautiful API console. It was like $50,000 for that console. But look at the picture. It's in his barn, and he was just using it for recording and rehearsals. And the funny thing that I thought came out of this whole thing is he realized he doesn't like to record. He likes to just go into a studio. He has the ideas, and they record them. And that's kind of a lesson for some people. If you're not technical, sometimes it's better just to go hire a studio. They have all the gear there. Concentrate on your art, get it all done, and then, walk out with the product that you want. But it's if you look at this picture, you can see all the stuff that's set up around it. And it didn't take him long for him to figure out that this is not what he wanted to do. And eventually he just sold the console. But there you go. I was going through some old pictures that I had, and I came across these pictures of this Cliff microphone. And this has kind of an interesting history behind it, because I knew all about this microphone before it hit the market, or before anybody really knew about it. And one thing about the relationship with dealers with vendors is, sometimes you have a really good relationship, and they'll tell you what they're working on and what's coming, just so you have a heads up, and what how to position things, or even give them feedback. And I have a really great relationship with Doug Fern, and we're always I used to sell a ton of his mic pre's and the compressors, and then they're really great pieces. They're home runs every time. If you can afford it and you heard it, you would buy it. And it's as simple as that. But I was out talking to him one day, and I said, what are you working on that's new? And he said, well, he's always been a huge fan of ribbon microphones. And the funny thing is, he got me hooked up with AEA to become a ribbon microphone dealer. And I bought the whole AEA line of microphones. And this is kind of a sidestep, but I had the whole AEA microphone line, and I used to send them out for people to try them, and everybody loved them, but I couldn't sell them. It just, I couldn't close the deal, even though they loved it and they took pictures of themselves in the studio with it, and they would record with it. They would always return them and go, "They're the great microphones," but they just, I don't know if they had it in their budget, or I just couldn't put my finger on it. What was the problem with the ribbon microphones? But anyways, Doug got me in touch with them, and they made me a dealer. And he's always been a big fan of ribbon microphones. So he was developing his own ribbon microphone. And Doug actually had a mic pre that was specifically made for ribbon microphones. So he had a friend, Cliff Hendrickson, I think is his name. And I think he's in New Jersey. And him and Doug were working on this ribbon microphone for a long time. And I think the way Doug wanted to position this is sell the microphone with the ribbon microphone preamp. So it'll be a package. And at a certain point, I think Doug just didn't have any more time to spend on the microphone, and he had to work on some other things. And Cliff, I think, went in a different direction with it, and decided to just sell the microphone as is with no preamp with it. So at the beginning, I posted. You'll see pictures as I'm talking. This microphone, it's pretty impressive looking, big and hefty, and actually Cliff sent me an early one to try out, and there were some issues with it that I pointed out and sent it back to them, and they addressed them right away. But it's a big, hefty microphone, and what eventually happened is distribution was handled through Ocean Way Audio, and then Ocean Way Audio dealers had to call them to become a dealer for it. So, but I thought this was kind of an interesting story. It could have been a DW Fern microphone. And what I did is I did a little research and I found a few videos. And I think the earliest one I found was from 2014 where Cliff is talking about the microphone. And you'll see he's at the DW Fern booth. And you can see Doug sitting in the background and he's talking about the microphone. And I found another video what Sound on Sound did. And at that point, Ocean Way is handling distribution and the price dropped. It was $2,600 or $2,700. It dropped down to $2,100. And then there's a third video. I'll see if I'll put that one up. And that's the guy from Ocean Way talking about the microphone because they made some kind of modification to it. And now I see them selling for $2,600. So the price went back up again. But a very, very interesting microphone. Very heavy. I've really never heard it in its final stage, but if Doug was involved with it, it sounded fantastic. So I'll put the pictures in the background and you can see this microphone and see what you guys think. But that's the story of the day.
This is Cliff Mike's RM1 ribbon microphone. And one of the things it does is these two squares are neodymium magnets, basically like the A-bomb of permanent magnets. And you can't see all this, but the magnetism gets focused in the gap of where the ribbon is. And I'm getting 1 Tesla of magnetic field. It's a very intense magnetic field. So this is a real advancement for a ribbon mic because it has a very, very smooth, nice, pretty high end. It sounds beautiful and it does not have any noise. It's got a preamplifier. Here's the label. It's got a preamplifier that was developed in collaboration with the LR Bags company in Nipomo, California. It's all phantom powered. You just plug it in and it sounds normal. It's a very simple recording tool that gives professional results to anyone.
How much is it?
$2,700, a little $26.99. So basically $2,700 US. You can buy it online at cliffmikes.com. And I'm Cliff. I've been in the speaker business all my life. This is a new venture for me. And but everything I know about electroacoustics, I applied to this microphone.
We're here at the AES show in New York on the Ocean Way audio booth with Cliff Henriksen, who's going to show us a new ribbon microphone. So, Cliff, the RN1.
Yep.
Tell us about it. What's it all about?
Brand new. It's a very common ribbon format. It's a large format ribbon, and you can actually see it in there. But I've made some major improvements. This whole case is about 8 pounds, and that's because it's a magnetic circuit. And these two squares are big chunks of neodymium, and there's a huge amount of magnetic field inside at the ribbon. So I got, compared to an older ribbon I got a 6 dB improvement in overall level. And there's also a phantom-powered preamp built into the microphone. It's very, very sophisticated hi-fi discrete electronics. And right now it's being compared with large diaphragm condenser mics in terms of bandwidth and in terms of noise. I mean, there's no noise when you record with this thing. It's really a pleasure to work with. And also it's got you see a fabric grill. I really didn't want to put a metallic grill on this because when they make that noise, they make that ting ting noise. So this whole design evolved into a fabric grill on the outside and a fabric grill on the inside. You can see a rectangular frame, and it's a pop filter. And you simply can't P-pop this mic, which is another unusual thing for a ribbon.
So can you tell us a bit about the high frequency response then?
Goes all the way out past 20K, goes all the way down to 20 hertz. It's a full bandwidth, it's a high fidelity microphone, pure and simple.
And in terms of shock mounting, because this is a solid,
This is a solid mount. If you put this mic on a regular stand with this thing, and you have a singer jumping around on a wood floor, it's all going to get right into the mic. This is a shock mount with marine grade bungees, and when you put this mic, it weighs about 8 pounds. When you put it on there, it resonates about 2 hertz, and basically the thing becomes an inertial platform. You get very pure vibration of the ribbon. A lot of really lightweight mics, you can hold them in your hand and talk on them. You can feel them vibrating. So you don't want the microphone body to vibrate because it'll intermod with the the ribbon. This is not going to be moving when you talk into it with the shock mount.
So how much then do these cost, and when are they available?
These are available now. You can contact Ocean Way Audio, and there are dealers nearby. At this show, we're getting more and more dealers all the time, actually. This is its introduction. These are $2,100 US, and the shock mount's $150.
Okay.
Whoops.
Not that one.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, Cliff.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Hi, Sam from Sound on Sound here at the AES show in Los Angeles. I'm with Alan Sides, the owner of Ocean Way Studios. Hi, Alan.
Once again, thank you.
And under the Ocean Way audio brand, they're showing this very interesting ribbon microphone, the RM1B. Tell us a bit about this.
Well, it's sort of intriguing. A lot of ribbon microphones that we think of, generally, even though there's aspects about the character ribbon microphones that we like, they tend to be a bit quirky. I mean, most of the time we choose one, it's because we're looking for an artifact. This microphone is a bit more neutral. It has the positive characteristics of a ribbon microphone, but it sounds, in certain respects, more like a really great period U47. It has, like, as a vocal mic, it's quite spectacular sounding. Extremely smooth response all the way out to 25 kilohertz. It does not roll off. The biggest difference physically is that it has this phenomenal neo-medium magnet structure. So it has almost double the Gauss in the gap of almost any other ribbon microphone. So it puts out significantly more level, greater sensitivity. And the other thing is the mechanical structure on the ribbon. Most of the existing ribbon microphones are based on earlier designs. This is a complete departure.
Okay, tell us a little more about that.
Well, you see, the problem is, like in the early RCA microphones and even the B&O ribbons, which is kind of what Royer is based on, the physical structure around the ribbon, especially the wavelengths, very high frequencies, has a dramatic effect on the sound. The premise was how to create the structure around the ribbon so that it didn't negatively affect the sound sonically. So we wanted something that sounded completely neutral, had no real character, just sounded natural. We also wanted something that had greater sensitivity. So this microphone, apart from having about 8 dB more level just because of the magnetic flux, it also has a discrete amplifier that's phantom powered, very fast, very wide bandwidth. And if you plug this in, it puts as much level out as a 47.
So looking at it, I can see some very distinctive aspects to the design. Like the shape of the pole pieces in particular looks as though that's been quite important.
It's a change. I mean, obviously, because the magnetic structure is so strong, if you put it near anything that's big, the metal will pop right. It's a heavy microphone, but it took that to achieve the performance goals we had in mind.
Okay, and it's presumably a figure 8 mic, like any classic ribbon, yeah.
But we one of the top scoring mixers in LA had a chance to put these up as overalls compared to a set of M50s, and he was quite shocked at how good they sounded. And a lot of people who have been just amazed. Where you normally think of ribbon microphones for, well, I'm going to use it on the horns, or I'm going to use it on this, or guitar amp, and then all of a sudden you put it overhead drums, and you put a couple of API cues on a plus 4 12-phase shelf, and you say, that's ridiculous.
Sure, because normally with a ribbon mic, you expect a gentle roll off from
Exactly.
maybe 12, 15K up. But this goes flat to 25K.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not. But like the thing we like about ribbons is they're not sibilant, and it's not just it's the way that the ribbon responds because compared to the condenser diaphragms, they tend to make S's sound very silky, not as harsh. Because I mean, a great microphone like 47, it almost exaggerates the S's. They get to be a little more unpleasant. In this thing, you get both worlds. You get smooth, silky highs that actually sound more like you're actually talking.
Sure, because there are no resonances in the audio region in the ribbon, whereas with a condenser mic, that's typically what you get.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate,
Fantastic. So is this available to buy
It's available now.
And what sort of price are we looking at?
This microphone sells for about $2,600 retail.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Thanks very much, Alan.
I appreciate it. Okay.
So I'm pretty good friends with Doug Fern. He owns a company called DW Fern. And I've sold a bunch of his VT1 and VT2 mic pre's. But I remember in the late 90s, he came out with a direct box called the VT IF. And it was just a direct box. I mean, he had a passive direct box. This was active and it had tubes in it. And he brought it over for me to check out. And this thing was like a monster piece of gear. I've put pictures so you guys could see. I mean, you could see the edge of that is all thick steel that thing was made out of. And he was telling me that, it sounds incredible and, I should be able to sell them. And I was like, well, it's $1,200. I don't know if anybody's going to want to buy a $1,200 direct box. And he said, well, I'll leave it with you and see what happens. So when he left it with me, at that time I was working at Planet Medley and I had my office and it was just sitting on the Argosy I had in my office. And I remember Eric Bazillion coming in, the guy from the Hooters, and he saw it and he said, what is this? And I explained to him it's a direct box. And he says, well, does it sound good? He says, I told him I haven't tested it out. I really don't know, but it can't sound bad being as massive and as big as it is. And he wasn't really familiar with DW Fern at all. And I said, why don't you just take it home? And Eric only lived like maybe 5 miles down the street, or even closer than that. So he took it to his studio. And I think he had an endorsement with Ensoniq keyboards. And he plugged the Ensoniq keyboards in there. And he called me up. He said, oh, my God. He said, every one of my keyboards sounds thicker and bigger and fatter. He said, this thing's incredible. And everything he was plugging through it, he was just jumping up and down with excitement. And he wasn't really familiar with DW Fern. He said, what else does this company make? And I told him about the VT1 and the 2. And he said, I want to try that other stuff. And what he did, he came back and he borrowed the mic pre's to try them out. And one thing led to another, and he bought everything that Doug Fern made at that point. And it just goes to show you one product can introduce somebody to a whole product line and get them interested in what's going on. And Doug does not make anything cheap. He's been approached by other companies to buy his company, and they wanted to make things cheaper, and he wasn't interested in any of that stuff. Everything, even today, it's all made at really high quality. They discontinued making this VT IF, and Doug made it into a rack mount unit. I think it was called the VT3, and then they stopped making that, and I think they're making it in some other form right now. But that original one, that thing was a tank, and just a huge big brick of a piece of gear, but it made a huge difference when you used it. So I thought I'd point it out. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to point out that sometimes you have something that's interesting and it introduces a client to the whole rest of the line because they see the quality being put into one piece of gear. It extends to everything else. So there you go. Someone asked me in the comments if I had any Dave Hill stories, and Dave Hill was the owner of Crane Song, and he passed away last year. I don't I don't have stories. I could just tell you about my interaction with him. Very nice guy, very intelligent. We were a crane song dealer. Every single piece of gear that man made was a great piece of gear. You get the tracker, and you had the head unit, and the IBIS, and the STC8, all incredible units. But you would always see him at the trade shows, and he was always wearing short leather pants and sandals and a colorful shirt. And he had a ponytail. And I remember the last time I saw him, I just went up to him. I said, "Hey, Dave, what's new?" And that's what you do at the AAS shows, is ask people what's new so they could show you. So you can cut right to it. And he didn't say anything. He just grabbed a pair of headphones, gave them to me. He said, I put the headphones on. He put his headphones on, went right over to the head unit. And I'm listening to this music, and he's tweaking it. And as he's tweaking it, it's getting bigger and fatter and rounder. And it was getting bigger and bigger. And everything he was doing to it sounded really good. And then when he got it to where he thought it was to his liking, just hit the bypass switch, and it all dropped out. And all you heard was this thin mix. And then he hit the bypass switch again to turn it on, and you hear this big mix. And that was it. And I handed him back the headphones, and he didn't say anything to me. And that was the best demo. You just got to hear it with your own ears and understand what he was talking about. I remember he had a partner, and I think the partner sold out, but I used to call up to order parts, well, not parts, product. And his partner was a farmer, and he had chickens, and my wife had chickens, and we would talk about chickens for a while. But really friendly company. And whenever you got Dave on the phone, it was an intellectual conversation of things. So he will be missed. Nice guy. Not an incredible story, but that's my interactions I had with him. I was reading through the comments, and somebody was asking me about DAWs. And when I was involved with Digidesign at the very beginning, the discussion with all the reps was what would people migrate to? Because at that point, somebody was coming out with the Mark of the Unicorn was coming out with their DAW that had some extra features. And then, I remember Opcode Studio, they had some extra features. So all these other competing lines would come out with extra features. And at Digidesign, we were trying to figure out, would people actually migrate to other DAWs? And the answer was no. I mean, back then it was pretty expensive to do the switch over. And the other thing is, if you're used to using your DAW, your whole hand memory or finger memory of doing the key commands and getting through quickly, you need to get work done. And getting to another DAW, there's a cost involved, but also there's the learning curve. And now I personally own like 5-6 different DAWs. I have the software because they're cheap to buy, to have. So now it's not as much of an issue as it was back then. And we're talking mid-80s, well, not mid-80s, well, early 90s and on. So 30 years or so. So it's a different topic now of what DAW you're using, because you can afford to have Logic and Studio One and all these other ones, and they're all good. It's just a matter of, are you comfortable working in there? I personally am very comfortable working in Pro Tools to get things done. So if somebody gives me a file and says, "Can you do all this work?" I will gravitate towards the Pro Tools to get it done. Now, some people think it's overpriced, but it works, and it works well all the time. And they were the first ones to really make it work well all the time and make it dependable. Where a lot of these other companies, they were trying, and there's a lot of crashing, and they didn't have all the capabilities and that kind of stuff going on. So you got to give them a little credit for doing it first. But I think maybe the prices are a little high now compared to what's out there. So, but that's the thing to take in consideration, when you're thinking about a DAW. What are you used to? What have you been using? But like I said, they're cheap enough that you can have a few of them and go from one to the other, because some are better at doing some things than other ones are. So there's my 2 cents. Somebody asked me in the comments for my feedback on digital consoles and why they depreciate so quick compared to the analog consoles. And you should make a distinction between a digital console and a digital control surface, because control surfaces don't have any mic pre's in there, and the monitor section is kind of limited. But they do depreciate pretty quickly. I remember Digidesign had their Pro Control, and then that was pretty expensive. And then they came out with the Control 24. And then they came out with the D control and the D command, and they had variations of that. And then they came out with the whole S6 and S4 and all that stuff. But with Digidesign specifically, what they would do is phase things out, so things wouldn't work with Pro Tools anymore. So the Pro Control was made so no more updates for it, and the D control and D command, I don't know if they work with the newer version of Pro Tools anymore. And now with the S6 and S4, you have to pay it's kind of a licensing fee to use those things every year, and they're pretty hefty. You can use the smaller control surfaces, the S1, and that's modular, and the dock that's modular, and not have to pay that licensing fee. But with the control surfaces, it was planned obsolescence. That's what was going on with Avid and Digidesign. The other thing people have to understand, that code from Digidesign or Avid, how to control Pro Tools, was never released out to the public. So all these other control surfaces, they just follow Mackie Huey. Mackie at one point had gotten to a point where they could make their control surface, was called a Huey. It would work in Pro Tools, and it worked through MIDI. And a lot of people just made their control surfaces work in that mode. So it's volumes, bands, not as detailed as the Avid spec, but it works. So that's yet, and the resolution of the faders weren't as accurate as they were with the Avid control surfaces. But that's with the control surfaces. Now, and so as far as them depreciating, it was just planned that way, because Control 24 is still a nice console. Well, it has, and that one does have mic pre's in it. So, but there's no processing, no EQs of that. It's just a control surface. But that had problems with the power supply, and they were running out of parts to fix those things. But that's control surfaces. Digital consoles, like Yamaha makes a digital console. I think PreSonus makes digital consoles, but those things, it's just that they get old, and the sampling rates. I remember the RSP control surface, the Project X, the one I sold to Teddy Riley and I sold to Manchester Craftsman Guild. The maximum sampling rate was 48K. So, when you got into the 96K and the 192 and the 384 and then DSD, I don't even know if there's a DSD console, out there. That's a whole other, subject. But as the sampling rates get higher and the consoles can't support them, there's another reason they depreciate in value. There's another thing too is, and I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but SSL, when they made their big digital console, I think it was the Axiom, they didn't realize this, but when you put an EQ in on a channel and the compressor in on a channel, it had a different latency than if the next channel that had just EQ on or just the compressor. So after making them, they realized that was a big problem. And those consoles, they were very expensive and they were kind of almost worthless. I remember Mutt Lang had one, and he was trying to fix it and modify it and get it to work and do everything. And then he kind of gave up on it. And It got sold to Angel Mountain, which was a really bad idea. I had nothing to do with it. I was gone from the place, but I heard that they bought one. But and I heard that they paid good money for it, and they should never have paid good money for that console, because I guess one way around it is just have the EQ and the compressor on every channel and make the latency all the same. But people didn't know, and there was other things that created latency in that console. That's early digital consoles, but when you're asking why are they depreciating, it's at the very beginning. There was flaws in the console design, and even the new ones now, I mean, they're better and they work great and all that, but as they come out with faster processors and more features, they're just going to lose their value, and they lose them fast. Analog consoles, if you have an old Neve, if you have an old API, those things, they'll just constantly hold their value. Anything digital like the Euphonics, those things, I don't think they're worth a whole lot of money right now. But that's just the way it is. So somebody wanted my opinion. There you go. About 10 years ago or so, I started getting interested in what the mastering engineers were using for their monitoring system, because I really wanted to hear what these guys were listening to. Even though I've sold a ton of gear to mastering places, I would always see these big tower speakers, and I never knew much about them. So I started doing the research into them, and it all came back to a guy named John Dunlavy. And he was, I think, from Denver, or that's where the company ended up. But he worked for a company in Australia called Duntech, and they made his speakers there. And at some point, he decided to leave the company and start his own company, and that was in Colorado. And he had the Dunlavy's, the 1, the 2, the Model 3. The Model 4s were the ones that were starting to get into the mastering facilities, the Model 4As specifically. And then they went to, they had a Model 5 that had a 12-inch woofer on the top and the bottom. And then they had a Model 6 had a 15-inch woofer on the top and the bottom. And the Model 6s were 530 pounds each. But the Duntechs, they made a speaker called the Sovereign 2001, I think it was. And it was pretty much the identical to the Dunlavy's Model 5s. And I did all this research, and I found out they're the speakers, for the mastering facilities that a lot of people they're the kind of the holy grail. And I looked into them, and people, I think they were $30,000 when they were new. And people were looking between $15,000 and $10,000 for them. So a pair of them came up on eBay for $4,000. Guy got him in on, he's a carpenter. Somebody paid him with these pairs of speakers. He just gave them to him, and he had a picture, and you could see they were just in his basement. You could see, all kind of junk. So you could tell it wasn't a studio. But he was saying, I have no need for him. I just like to get the money that was owed to me. And it was like $4,000. So I said, all right. So I wired him the money. And being a carpenter, he made the crates and everything for them. And I had them shipped to me. And it was a big, big deal to get them into my office. And I'll post some pictures of these speakers. And I think they're like 6 feet tall. And I think they weigh around 300 or 400 pounds each. But he sounded fantastic when everything was said and done, but they were just huge. And it's one of those things that I don't know if people know the history of that speaker line, but when they tested those speakers, they would test each speaker and make sure each component was right for that speaker. So if you blew up a component, it was a big deal to find replacements for them. And then it got harder and harder, because they weren't making the replacement drivers for them anymore. Their Dyne Audio was making some of the drivers. And I got my Sovereign, what do you call the Duntechs in, and I was running them on a big Pioneer amplifier I had, and they sounded pretty good. But my friend Tom Volpicelli came over and he was like, we should run a Bryston on these things. So I had a Bryston that someone traded in, and I never plugged it in to check it out. But we plugged it into those Duntex, and it was a big mistake because immediately some popping noise happened, and the one or two of the drivers went. And luckily enough, there was a recone center close by that was an older gentleman, and I would take it over to his house and I showed him, and he says, "Oh, I'll get them up and running." And he didn't replace them, he just fixed them. And we got him in, and I ran the Pioneer amplifier, which it was no slouch. This Pioneer amplifier was like $5,000. And they sounded great. But there came a time where it was time for me to move my office, and I just wasn't going to be able to move them into the new place because they were just too huge. But I eventually sold them and a bunch of other stuff for $10,000. But if you ever get a chance to hear some Dunlavys, because the Model 4s, I had bought a pair of those, and I just wanted to go to the bigger pair, and I sold them to Tom at the mastering house. He still has them, and he has separate Quested subwoofers just to add that little bottom that he thought was missing. But they sound great, and I don't know if people know about them, but if you get a chance, just take a listen, because once, I think, as they're getting older and getting harder to find the drivers for them, they're just not going to get repaired anymore. And some people are just asking for crazy numbers for them right now. I saw a pair for $12,500. I saw another pair for $20,000, and now they're 30-year-old passive speakers, which sound great, but it's a mechanical device there. The drivers, and at a certain point, they're just going to stop. So there's my Dunlavy story. I came across some YouTube videos that I had done 17 years ago. I always felt like I was doing things before other people were doing it, and I started a channel called Studio Logic Sound, all one word. That's my pro audio company. And I have on that channel a bunch of DW Fern videos that I did with Doug. And I had Will Smith's father, Will Smith Sr., do all the video shooting. The only thing I did that was kind of bad is I uploaded them at 240 resolution. So they're kind of grainy. So I looked at them, and the problem I have is I can't log back into it. I forgot the password. I don't know how to do it. So, but out of the DW Fern, and there's a ton of DW Fern videos out there, but one product that I got Doug to talk about was the VT15. And Doug only made 25 of them. And that was it. And it was a recording channel. And the reason he stopped production on them was he realized this was the only product that he made that somebody could make it sound bad if they didn't know what they were doing. Because it had, the mic pre, the EQ, all these little variations in there. So he took it off the market, and it stopped. But I did a little looking around, and I found that there is no information on the VT15 out on the internet. There are no videos on the VT15 of him talking about it or anybody showing it. So I posted a picture of the front and the back of the unit that are high res. And then after this, you'll see the video that I did with Doug on the VT15, going through all the settings on it, which I thought was very, very interesting. So here you go, something that you don't see on the internet, kind of a very cool piece. I had sold 2 of them as soon as they came out. And then Doug wanted me to get them back because he didn't want them really out there. And he had me replace them with a VT2. And he just replaced with the equipment that was equivalent to it, which actually the customer turned out getting a better deal than having the 2 VT15s. So here you go. I hope you enjoy this.
This is the DW Fern VT15 recording channel. This is a single channel all vacuum tube device, which combines the features of our VT2 microphone preamplifier, the VT7 compressor, and a subset of the controls from the VT4 equalizer, all in a one single channel unit. Starting at this end of the box, we have the microphone preamplifier section. This is the gain for the microphone preamplifier. We can select whether that input comes from a microphone or from a line input. So we can feed line level into this as well as microphone input. It has a 0 position or a minus 20 dB position input pad if the level is too high. That's functional both in the mic and in the line position. And then we have a switch which selects a low Z for non-standard impedance microphones. On this row, we have a switch which will switch on the 48-volt phantom power on the microphone, and a phase reverse switch so that when if you're using more than one microphone and there's a phase discrepancy between them, you may find that one position or the other is it gives you a better mono compatibility. And the last switch here switches between the microphone or line input and the instrument input. This 1/4-inch jack is an input for electric instruments such as a bass or a guitar or a keyboard. Anything that would normally go into a guitar amplifier can be plugged into there. On the instrument input, none of these other switches are functional, but the gain control still will adjust the gain of it. The compressor in this unit is identical to the VT7 compressor, except, of course, it's only one channel. It has all the same features. It has the high-pass filter in the side chain so that it reduces the sensitivity of the compression to low frequencies. It has a threshold control and a gain makeup control, just like on a VT7. It has attack and release controls and a control that we label harder and softer, which can be used to change the effects of that. For all the details on how these controls work, you can look at the VT7 segment because that explains all that in detail. This also has a bypass switch for the compressor, which you can switch the compressor out entirely. After that, we have a very simplified version of the VT4 equalizer. It has much the same sound, but it does not have quite the versatility. It uses fixed frequencies for the low frequency boost and low frequency cut, which can be used together like on the VT4. It has fixed frequency for the high frequency boost and high frequency cut. And it also has a Q control for the high frequency boost so that you can adjust that from fairly sharp to quite broad, and a bypass switch. And since in the real world of recording, there's often times when you want to put your equalizer first and then your compressor, and other situations you want the compression first followed by the equalizer, we have this switch here which reverses the compression and the equalization so that you can experiment with that to see which way works best for a particular recording situation. Down at this end, there's a switch for the VU meter. In the right-hand position, as is shown here now, we're looking at the output level of the entire VT15. When we switch it here, we're looking at the gain reduction of the compressor. The unit has a power switch and a pilot light, and essentially, for more detail on each of the individual sections, you could look at the VT2, the VT7, and the VT4 segments and learn more details about that. That's the VT15 recording channel.
Before Pro Tools got big, or even Sound Tools got big, there was this other company called Daxis, and it was owned by Studer. And I remember that I was sent out for training for the system out in California, and they were in Menlo Park, California. And the interesting thing about it, the training I would do, Digidesign was across the parking lot from these guys. And they were both competitors, and Digidesign wasn't that big yet. But what they did is they started a trade-in program, and so you could trade in your Daxis and get a Pro Tools or a Sound Tool system. And what the guys at Digidesign did is they made a pile of the traded in Daxis, and they just put them in the parking lot. So this big, huge pile, and it was just kind of making fun of the Daxis people, like, look what we got in. People are trading this stuff in to buy our systems, not yours. And it was funny because the guys from Daxis would say they're close enough that we could hit them with a rock we throw there. If we threw a rock, we would hit them. And they said we often do. So there was this rivalry. I mean, it was all in good fun, but it was interesting at the very beginning that that was going on. The Daxis was it's pretty much a 2-track system. I don't think there was waveform editing at the very beginning, and they were a little touchy, and they were very expensive. But people would use them before the Pro Tools system happened. But that was the interesting story. Every morning I kind of look at Facebook, just kind of reading the newspaper to see what's going on in in my end of the world. And I always look at the marketplace, and these speakers popped up and were Earthworks Sigma 6.2s, and it immediately brought a memory back of when I first saw these speakers. I saw them, I think it was at an AES show. Earthworks, they make these high-end microphones, and this was their first time getting into making studio monitors. And you can see they're very unique design. They had the tweeter separate from the cabinet, and it's all analog, no electronics inside of it at all. So as far as I knew, it was a passive monitor. And I saw it at the show, and I remember them telling me about it, and they never brought one down for me to check out, but it was always very interesting. And they seemed like there was a push on them. It was the early 2000s. I never saw them in a studio, but they seemed to kind of fade away. But the interesting thing too is they came out with a Sigma 6.3, and I'll put a picture of that. So it had 2 woofers, 5-inch woofers and a bigger cabinet. I don't know if they ever made those speakers, but this was just an interesting speaker that was around. And I did a little research, and it seems like people that have them love them. And if you can get your hands on them, they're kind of unique. There was on Facebook a pair of them for $1,600, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad price, but right now they're 25-year-old speakers. So another interesting pair of speakers that I came across in my days of selling pro audio. So this story is about Edac audio. So Edac audio. It's a company out of Mexico that makes pro audio gear, and I've been following them for years. And I've tried to reach out to the owner of the company, Benjamin, I forgot his last name, but he's responded, but it just didn't seem to have any interest in selling his gear in the United States. And he made 500 series modules and racks, and he has tube gear, and it all seemed very cool stuff. But every time I would reach out to him, he wasn't too interested. I mean, he's very polite. And I even tried to make a Facebook page for him and a YouTube channel. I think I tried to make some other things for him. I said, here, I set him up for you. So all you have to do is start. And he's like, well, why would you do that? I go, I'm trying to help you out. He said, well, I don't know. And I said, you know what? I'll just take down what I created and leave it alone. But I thought I'd put some pictures up of his gear. It's interesting stuff. Never heard it. And it's, like I said before, I'm always interested in finding gear that hasn't been out in the market and see what I can do with it. I mean, granted, I got to hear it. It has to sound good before I can push it. But it's always exciting to take new and interesting gear out to clients and say, here, give this a shot. Tell me what you think about it. That's I always said excitement, enthusiasm sells. And if you're enthusiastic about anything, you can that enthusiasm transmits over to the client you're talking to. So Edac, EDAX. So there you go. I remember when I was working at Planet Medley, the music store, because Planet Medley was the pro audio department. The music store would sell event monitors, and they were like tubby sounding monitors. They weren't great sounding monitors. They were Project Studio monitors. But the thing about them, they were so cheap. People kept blowing up tweeters and blowing up woofers, and the store could never get parts for them. So what they started doing is robbing parts from new monitors to put into the old monitors to keep the customers happy. And what that did, eventually it caught up to them, because I would go into the warehouse and I would see, and I'm not exaggerating, like a mountain of event speakers sitting there with no drivers in them at all these cabinets just sitting there, because they were all taken out to put into customer speakers, so they had speakers that worked. Now, I don't know if they eventually, took care of that problem, but that's the problem with a speaker company that doesn't have parts. If you don't have the parts, then you're in big trouble. And then we kind of referenced the KRK, having that kind of problem. But event back then, this is like, 97, 98, around there, that there was a big problem. Maybe they figured it all out by now. I don't even know if Event makes monitors anymore, but that was kind of an interesting situation. So I did a video a few days ago about Exegee, which is a speaker company out of England. And if you want, just go back and you can listen to it and see what I had to say. But they have some very interesting near field monitors that I was curious to see what happened with them. And in 2014, they had a prototype to just show that they could do it. And it sounds like they're going to be coming out with a real version of this speaker. Because I had Matt Dobson, who's the director of Exegee, get in touch with me. He sent me an email, and he says, in about 12 weeks, check back on our website and see what we're doing. I think you're going to really enjoy this. You'll like it. And I said, okay. And I did a little research on Exegee, and there's like non-existent on the internet. I mean, you see a few things. I see Troy Germano. He has a studio design company, and he says he uses Exegees for his studio designs. And he said he puts it in the Hit Factory, which the Hit Factory is gone now. So Matt from Exegee was telling me that, they never put speakers in the Hit Factory. They put it in, they had Boxer speakers that he was involved with, which another kind of a cool line. If you see them, the fit and finish is really great, and they're big monitors, but I don't know what happened to them. But what I'm driving at is this looks like a very interesting company, and I get all excited finding interesting new companies maybe to help out. But it brings up the story of when I had when it came to the time where I wasn't the Quested distributor anymore. I thought I'd find a small speaker company that I could take and then make it maybe into the new near field monitors for people. I did try talking to Proac, but they were discontinuing the Studio 100s and they were coming out with a new one. So I said, well, let me look around and see if I find anything. And I came across this one company, and I don't want to say their name, but they had a very interesting speaker. It was a near field two-way. Actually, had a tweeter and a like a 6-inch woofer. It had two, I think it was 8-inch passive radiators on the side, and it was a passive speaker. And I remember I got them. I found out about this, and I got in touch with the company, and they were based out of Maryland. And I said, I'd like to buy a pair of these speakers. I want to see if they would be a great pair of speakers to mix with. So they agreed to sell me a pair, and I had them shipped straight to Serban. And I said, would you do me the favor and listen to these and tell me what you think before I get them? And Serban said, yeah, sure. And I sent him down there, and he calls me up, and he puts me on FaceTime. And he says, all right, let's listen to these things. So he put his camera there, and you see him unplug his Proax and plug these speakers in, and then he has his big Bryson amplifier in, and he's listening, and then he stops, he unplugs him, plugs his Proax back in, and he goes, "Okay, George, no, hard no." He said, and I said, "What? They don't sound good at all." He said, "No." He says, "George," he says, "it's just not going to work." He says, "What they're sending is not representative of what I need to hear." And he says, "No, it's not going to work." And I thought maybe another model that this company had would be better. So they had these tower speakers, and I thought, well, maybe they will work. And so I got them sent over to the mastering house, or mastering studio, to see if maybe I could sell their mastering speakers. Maybe they sound better. And we got them over there, and Tom Volpicelli, he listened to them. He goes, "No, these aren't going to work." And I called the company and said, "Well, maybe we could come over and show you how they're supposed to be set up." So they came over, and they were moving them an inch one way and an inch another way, and making sure everything was exactly with the right position. And we would listen to them, and they just didn't do the trick. So the point is, sometimes I find a speaker line and I get way excited, and I'm like 10 steps ahead of how I could promote it and do some marketing and get people to listen to it. But I need to slow down and stop and listen to the product first and see if it's worthy of getting involved with it. Because once you hear something and you go, "Wow, this is fantastic," all the rest of it comes easy. But if you do all the work and then you listen to the product and go, "Oh, this is not going to work at all," you really dug a big hole for yourself, and all you're doing is digging it deeper. So you should just stop from the get-go. So I sent an email back to Exegee, and I said I'd help them out if I could. But I think the bottom line is you got to hear these speakers. The little reviews that I've heard of the speakers, and they've been around for 20 years, they said they sound good. But these little active monitors, I don't know what they sound like. And with all the tweeters, we'll see if is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? And sometimes you plug something in and you go, "Oh my God, I didn't think these could sound as good as they do." So that's my little story today. Sometimes you got to hear the product first and then go and tell people about it. Because if you tell somebody how great it is and never heard it, and really, that seems like that's what's going on in the industry anymore. People never heard a product and tell you how great it is. So there's my story for today. So this is more of a commentary rather than a pro audio story. But this one company, I've been kind of, I first heard about them. They make speakers or studio monitors, whatever you want to call them. And I saw that Pete Townsend had a pair of these speakers in his a personal studio. And I think the company is Exegee, EXIGY. And this is like 15 years ago. And I kind of tried to find out information on them, and it seemed like they were kind of a new company. And then I saw some other speakers they made. They made these little speakers with a bunch of tweeters and different versions of it. And then they had woofers on the sides, kind of like the Barefoot, but these were angled a certain way. And I was curious about this. And I saw a few pictures and I saw them in studios, but never really heard anything about them. And all of a sudden, one of their pictures popped up in my photos library, and I was wondering what happened to them. And I looked up their website, and they do have a website, and it says, "Thank you we've been in business for 20 years, and here's all the great studios that have our product in there." And they had some pictures, and I'll post the pictures. You can see some of their stuff, and then they have some of their speakers, but it doesn't say anything about their product line or how much the speakers are or how you would order or anything like that. And I just thought this was fascinating, these little speakers they make. But if you look at the pictures, there's one picture, they're in Peter Gabriel's studio, in Real World Studio. And you can see it's kind of like the main monitor, and then they have the subwoofer cabinet. And then there's another picture that they have a whole Atmos system going on. So they've been around for a while, and I think the Hit Factory had some of these speakers in there, and when they went out of business, or was it Germano Studios? They started that and they put them in there, and then I saw they went out of business and they were trying to sell the parts. So the company's been around for a long time, but I never can understand these small companies why they don't do more marketing or at least get all the information on their website, especially when you have a website and you can put all the information there. And if somebody's interested, they could buy it from you. I did shoot them off an email to say, whatever happened to those little speakers? Did they put them in production, or were they with one-offs, or what? But I guess the whole point of this is some of these smaller companies, it would be nice if they got more information out. Again, maybe they're small and they want to stay small and they're happy with the business that's coming in, and that's that. But I always felt you need to push a little bit to get the business to stay in business, because if you stay where you're at, it could be dangerous. So, but that's I guess my story or my comment of the day. I wanted to comment on the Furman product line. That I put the mic pre, and then I put the monitor controller up just because I thought they were interesting looking. I do not benefit from anybody buying any of this stuff or help promote it. It was just, I saw it was interesting. I thought I'd stick some pictures up there because I get the feeling this kind of community of people that are following what I'm doing, the pro audio people, and they just appreciate interesting design. I did, the guy who owns the company, I guess, he got in touch with me through email, and, I tried to talk to him through a phone, but he speaks Chinese and I don't. So we were emailing back and forth, and he was telling me that he wanted to take it to the NAMM show, and he just never got it there. And I never told him, but taking it to the NAMM show probably wouldn't have made much of a difference. His best bet is find a distributor. And someone suggested Gil from Wave Distribution. And I know Gil. I've known him since the 80s, when he was at Eventide. I remember he brought me the Distressor when I was with Boyz II Men. We were just putting the Stone Creek Studios together, and he brought it over for us to check it out. And nobody ever heard of the Distressor. So that's how long I've known Gil. But I emailed the guy in China. I said, here's a distributor, and here's Gil's personal email address. Why don't you reach out to him and see if he's interested? So if something comes of it, great. If it doesn't, it's okay. I have no I don't benefit from this at all. I'm just trying to help people out. But I just wanted to make that clear. I'm not making any money from this. I make a couple dollars from the doing the YouTube channel. I call it pizza money. So at the end of the month, they can buy a pizza or something like that for me and my wife. So that's my commentary on it. It looks like high-end gear. It looks like it's well built. I even told the guy, I said, hey, you should make the website so it reads in English. And he said, well, if I get a commitment, then I'll do it. And it's sometimes, you help people that want to help themselves. And I go, well, you should just do that. But I don't care. Whatever he does is fine. It looks interesting, and good luck to him. So there's my 2 cents about that product line. The other day I was looking at my Facebook feed, and Mercury Audio, they had a bunch of pictures of them going to China to see their pro audio dealer out there. And it was interesting to, they were showing all their product, but I think, I don't know if you would call this commentary or not, but I think everybody does this in the pro audio community. You look at the racks and you go, okay, I know what that is. I know what that is. You know every little piece. But every so often something pops up, you go, what is that? And I'm kind of a sucker for big VUs. And I saw this one piece and I was like, what is that? So I zoomed in on it, and it was too pixelated, so I couldn't find out. So I go, hey, you know what? The pro audio dealer, they named him. So I went to their website, and I found the manufacturer. It was called Freeman. And I looked it up, and I'll put the link in the description so you can see. but I'll put some pictures in this one too. But they have a mic pre, and these VUs, they're the big circular VUs that look fantastic. And this is all visual. I don't know what the thing sounds like, but I did see on the back of it, it says 220. So it's probably made for, I guess the electricity in China is 220. So it's probably not made for export. But the one thing that I found that it was a little funny, the logo looked like a ferryman. It looked like a guy holding a lantern, but the product, the company is called Freeman. So I was wondering if somebody just didn't put the right name in there, or I don't know, understand what the logo has to do with the name. But I put it out there. I think we're all kind of like suckers for new pro audio gear, just to check it out and see what's out there. Even though probably we have more than enough in our studios to get the job done. This is how I became the U.S. distributor for Fredenstein. I was at the AES show, and at that point, I was the U.S. distributor for Quantec. And the lady from Quantec, Alma, I think that's her name, a German lady, she came and she rented a booth, and she really had no way of demonstrating any of the gear. So I had to arrange to get, a headphone amplifier and all that. And I sat at the booth and I helped her out. But 2 booths up from me was Fredenstein. And one of my clients came up to me and he said, "You should check these guys out. It's pretty interesting." So I went over there and I looked, and they had a lot of gear there, 500 series racks and modules. And there was this German guy, Fred Stuckert. And he is Fred from Fredenstein. And German guy, and he designs everything. And I started talking to him, and he really had a lot of really great ideas, but he had no distribution in the United States. And I said, "Well, if you want, I can do it for you." And we'd start talking, and he thought, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea." So I remember Chuck Ainley was at the booth, and I talked to him about Fredenstein. And he told me a bunch of stuff about it and how great it was and how he uses it and not. And I go, "Well, that's good enough for me." Talking to somebody with those kind of credentials, and he wasn't trying to sell it to me. He was just telling me how he uses it. And I said, "All right, I'll get involved with this." So they sent me a bunch of demo gear, and I start sending it out to dealers. And I hired some reps. The reps would be people that would take it to the dealers and get the dealer network all set up, and then I get a commission to the reps, and I have to set up the pricing structure for everything. But at the beginning, all that was selling was the 500 series racks. They had the Bento 6, which is their 6 slot one, and a Bento 8 and a Bento 10. But their modules and their big compressor, they had one that was a Fairchild copy. And they had this big the compressor, and then they had the mic pre that was supposed to be a copy of what was it? Oh, I forgot. I think it was a Telefunken, something like that. But it was really good stuff. When you took it out, people heard that, but that end of it was pricey. So what ended happening is, I got a little bit of a network going on, and when everything was said and done, because the stuff was being made in Taiwan and shipped to me, the shipping was killing me. The dealers were making good money. The reps were making good money. The customers were really happy with the product. But when you boiled it all the way down, I was losing money on every sale. And I just kept on thinking, well, if I could just get a big enough dealer involved, it'll even itself out. And I remember getting in touch with Sweetwater and even Vintage King. And I couldn't get Vintage King involved in it. And Sweetwater, I even volunteered to them. I said, I will drive out there with the whole product line and go through the whole line with your whole salespeople. And I was talking to Chuck Surak directly. And he said, "Oh, no, we're not picking up any more 500 series modules or anything related that way." And I said, "But look at the price point on these things. I mean, they made a mic pre that was like $200 list price, and then they make a compressor. things were entry level, then mid level, then high end level. I mean, they made a tube bike breed that was a 500 series module. So they had a lot of really great ideas, and they go, no, we kind of, we're not picking up any more lines. And I think the nail, in the coffin that kind of sealed it for me is I got a pretty big shipment from them, and there were some things that weren't right with the shipment, and I had to return the stuff. And paying for the shipping coming in, I was losing money. So paying for the shipping going out was going to kill me. And at that point, I said, I have to resign the line. I mean, everybody was happy with it except for me. I wasn't making, I wasn't even breaking even with the line. But I got enough people to recognize the line and know what the name was. Before I got involved with it, they would say, well, it's just some company from Taiwan. No, it's a company that has a German designer who lives in Taiwan, and it's made out in Taiwan. So still, very well made equipment. So I resigned the line, and here's the funny part of the whole thing. Fredenstein found a distributor in Ohio that picked up the line, and almost immediately, like a week after they picked up the line, Sweetwater became a dealer for it, and they picked up the whole line, everything. And I even reached out to that Chuck Sorak guy, and I said, why is it that you picked up the line after I resigned it, but when I had it, you wouldn't pick it? And he said, oh, George, don't take it personally. We just decided to pick it up at that point. And it just, that coincidence didn't sit right with me. So it just kind of tells me that the politics of being a rep or a distributor and having your connections, that's a big deal to get those connections all established. Because I just didn't have any connections to Sweetwater. So this little distributor in Ohio did, and they just walked it in, and now I guess, are popular. You see them all over the place, the racks and the modules and that. So I kind of started that line. I don't know, I did. I started the line, and I just didn't benefit from it at all. And the thing I found out about being a distributor, you can't be too good or too bad. If you're really good at it, the manufacturer will take the product away from you and start selling directly. If you're too bad at it, the manufacturer will take it away from you because you're not selling enough. You have to be an average distributor to be a successful distributor. And I was in the average part of it because I was buying a decent amount, but I wasn't making any money. So it was a very unique situation. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Fredenstein, good product line. I launched it. I got it going. Didn't benefit from it at all. I learned a big lesson from that. I became distributors for other lines. I'll talk about those later. So this story may be some useful information for people out there, as well as kind of an interesting thing that I did. When I was working at Sigma, me and Joe Tarsia decided to make these Sigma Direct boxes. And part of the deal of taking the Direct box in the packaging, I figured, let's make some T-shirts and wrap the Direct box in the T-shirt and use it as packing material, but also the person who buys the Direct box gets this cool T-shirt. But I had to go out and buy like 100 of these T-shirts and had them pre-made and prepaid for them. And Joe thought it was a good idea, and I think we got them into the Philly International store. They were selling them there. But I was looking for a way to do this without ordering so much and having so much in stock and having different sizes. So I came across this website called TeePublic, and you can upload your design there, and they will take that design and make any kind of T-shirt, any kind of color, and then make hats and cups and all that kind of stuff. So, and you don't have to stock anything. The bad side is you don't make as much money. So, I think every T-shirt I sell, I was making $2, which is fine. But so I uploaded all the Sigma designs. But the interesting thing I did is on the back of the T-shirt, I listed every artist that every major artist that recorded at Sigma, and it's the who's who of everybody. But I thought it'd be kind of funny. I put my name right in the middle. So between George Clinton and George Harrison is my name. And we've sold, a good amount of these. And I don't know if anybody picked it out or not, but there's my name on the back of the T-shirt. I'll put the link in the description if anybody wants to order these things. But the $2 I get, that goes towards me paying for the Sigma Sound Studios website, just to keep that up and running. And all that is an image tool. I promised Joe Tarsia that I would perpetuate the name of Sigma Sound Studios any way I could in a positive light, and that's all he wanted. So it's a losing proposition because I don't make any money from it, but I feel like I'm fulfilling something that I promised him, and he was really a good guy. But maybe you guys have logos or T-shirts or stuff like that you'd like to do. TeePublic, it's pretty simple. Make an account, upload your design, and they send you money whenever they sell something. So there you go. I'll put some pictures up that you can see and some different colors in that of the T-shirt. I'm not trying to sell T-shirts. The main reason I was doing this was that I put my name on that, and I don't think really nobody recognized that or saw that. But if you want to buy a T-shirt, go ahead. Make $2. It's not pizza money. It's like frozen pizza money that I make. All right, there you go. So I was looking at my Facebook page today, and it happens for everybody. They bring up reminders of things that happened in the past, and pictures came up of a pair of Genelec speakers I sold 3 years ago to John Haynes, Serpent's partner. And he bought a pair of the 8361s, and he bought the subwoofers, the W371As. And it seems like it would be just a simple thing, just, collect the money, get the speakers in, and ship them to them. But it was a pretty complicated deal to make that whole thing happen. And it was about $30,000 worth of speakers. And John wanted a great set of speakers so he could check his stereo mix against the immersive mixes that he was doing. So that was the main reason he purchased them. And I'll post a picture so you can see them in his studio. But Genelec will not drop ship speakers to another state unless you're licensed to collect sales tax in that state. So the speakers had to be shipped to me here in my office in Pennsylvania, and then I had to ship them down to Virginia Beach to avoid the sales taxes, because I don't have to charge the sales taxes, when I'm shipping out of state, because I'm a smaller company. And, legally, the person buying them is supposed to pay the taxes when they want to, but I don't legally have to collect them. So getting them here, they're pretty big speakers. So it was a shipping company. And then they wouldn't deliver them to my office. So I had to arrange for somebody to go and pick them up from the trucking company and then get them down to Virginia Beach. But then I have to figure out an incentive for somebody that would drive a van down to Virginia Beach to to deliver those speakers and come back. So I made a deal with another client of mine, Michael Marquardt. He had a pair of Genelec 1037s down there, and he was willing to sell them to me for $2,000 for the pair, and they were in mint condition. So I looked around, and I got one of my clients. I said, if you drive down there, I'll sell you those speakers for what I'm paying for, but what you need to do for me is just deliver these speakers to John Haynes. And they said, yeah, they would do it. So I had to rent the van. They picked up the speakers here, drove them down there, picked up the speakers down there, drove them back. But it was a big fiasco to make this whole thing happen. But John was super happy with the Genelec speakers, and the guy that got the 1038s, he was super happy. But sometimes these deals, there's a lot more to them than just collecting the money and delivering the product. So there's the story about the Genelecs. By the way, those speakers sound fantastic. I asked John if he was happy, and he was super happy with them. So there you go. This is about the Meyer HD1 studio monitors. They were, I remember it was at TechCom, so this was late 80s. They had brought them in for us to listen to, had an 8-inch woofer, a tweeter, a pretty heavy monitor, and they were powered, and they were telling us nobody can blow these things up. They're calibrated, and you can play them as loud as you want, and everything is fine. And I remember I gave them to, I think it was to Jazzy Jeff. He took them for a day, and he brought them back, and he blew them up already. So that whole thing about them not blowing up, it didn't hold water. But they're great monitors. I remember Steely Dan used them a lot. When I got rid of all of Walter Becker's studio gear, there were 2 pair of HD1 monitors I had to sell for him. One thing about HD1 monitors, if you do have a pair, if you're going to ship them, you need to get the boxes from Meyer, because they're not only are they specially made for those speakers, but they have a sensor in the box to see if they were hit hard. Because if they're not in those boxes and they're hit, the woofers are so heavy it'll rip right out of the cabinet. And I learned the hard way because I sent a pair to a client, and when he sent them back to me, and he just wrapped them up in just a regular box, the woofers were all just ripped out of the cabinets, and I had to see about getting them repaired. And I called up Meyer, and the only way to repair those speakers, because they won't send you any parts, you have to buy the boxes that they tell you to get. You have to ship them back to Meyer. They have to put all the new parts in there, and then they recalibrate them, and they ship them back to you. And I think that whole deal was something like $800 or $1,000. So it wasn't cheap, but they're very strict about the tolerance of that speaker. So I thought maybe if people didn't know about the HD ones, that's the deal with them. Great speakers, but you have to be very careful with them. I wanted to talk about headphones because I was very intrigued at one point about headphones to mix with. So I did a bunch of research and found out which were in the pro audio community, not the hi-fi community, which were the best ones out there. And the one that kept on coming up, the Sennheiser, the HD 800s or the 880s. So I bought a pair of them and listened to them, and they I got to say they were light. They sounded pretty good, but they really didn't do anything for me. I bought them, I had them for about a day, and then I sold them immediately. And then I found out that Odyssey was the headphone company that makes headphones that mastering engineers, quote unquote mastering engineers are using, and all the professional people using. So I became a dealer for them, and I bought a pair for myself. Servant bought a pair, and another one I sold to a client. But they were all the reviews said that these things are excellent, and you put them on, and they sound neutral to me, which is good. But they're really heavy, and after a while, it was the LCD X's that I have. That's the one that they recommended for the professional people. All the other ones they said are colored. So if you wear them for a while, you start feeling that weight on your head, and above and beyond that, it didn't let any air circulation for your ear, so your ears kind of start feeling funny. And above that, your head, your skull just felt bad. So I would put them on and try to do as much work as I could, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I gave it every shot I could. And at a certain point, I said, that this is not for me. I love just listening to speakers because you hear the speakers and you hear the room, but the headphones, I just don't get it. Serban bought a pair. I asked him, and he said he just got them. If he has to do something where he doesn't have his speakers at, he can use them as a reference for the time being. But I asked him, do you really use them? He said, nah, not a lot. He says it's one of those things that's an emergency thing, and he said you always have to be on your toes, just in case something's down. You have a backup. So that to me meant that they pretty much stayed in their case, and they only came out if he really, really, really needed them. And he has backup of backups of backups, so he's fine. And I even I sent them to Doug Fern for him to listen to them. He thought they were okay, but he wasn't jumping up and down. So I don't get the whole mixing on headphones. I understand if you don't have a room, you don't have the budget, but these Odyssey headphones weren't cheap. I think they were like $1,800 for the pair. And as a dealer, I got them cheaper, but still, that's a decent amount of money for you could get a regular set of headphones. So there you go. That's my opinion on headphones. I think I'm still a dealer for Odyssey, but I just can't sell them with knowing that I don't like them. So I don't recommend any headphones for people unless they're for overdubs or things like that where you need headphones. So I had one of my celebrity clients get in touch with me the other day, and we were just exchanging pleasantries about Christmas and family and that. And the topic came up about them going back out on tour. And they were asking me, because I showed them this one time, there's a software by, I think the website is hitandmix.com, and it's called RipX DAW. And I took one of their songs when I first got the software, and I stripped out the vocals and I sent it to them, and they were like, "Oh my God, I didn't even know you could do something like this." But we were talking, and he said, "George, when you did that for me, just to show me the software, could you do that again?" And he said they were ready to go out on tour, and he wanted to rehearse his songs, but without his vocal in it, because he felt the vocal, it distracted him from, actually practicing his song. And I said, sure. So he sent me a list, and there was like 20 songs or so. And I dragged them all in, deleted muted the vocals and exported them and sent it to him. And he was so happy. He said, this is just so valuable to me that I'm able to practice with my own songs without my vocal in there, so I can really hone in on my skill. And I thought you guys would find this interesting. I don't know. Maybe everybody knows about this software, but I just think it's fantastic. And every year the software gets better and better, because the very first time I tried this software had a bunch of aliasing and it wasn't that great. But now I have a Mac Studio and it's pretty fast. And it is dependent on the speed of your computer, how fast it will do things. And they've been updating the code on this thing. It's gotten very, very, very good. So I'll put the link in the description. I'm not trying to sell it. If you guys are interested, you can go to their website. It's cheap. I think it's like $300 or $200 or so. But it is amazing that you can grab a song, pull it in there, and it'll make it your vocal, your guitar track, your percussion, drums, piano, and then you can go mute each one of them. And you could actually do a lot more than just divide them up like that. But I remember talking to Joe Tarsia a long time ago, and I said there was software like this that was coming. And he's like, oh my God. I said, what's wrong? He says, George, it took so long to mix those songs to get them right. Now people are going to take them apart and redo them. I go, well, that's the way it is. And he said, he wasn't happy with that. But so here, I'll put the link in the description and check it out. See if it's of use to you. Like I said, I don't know if people know about this, but it's a very, very interesting technology. Another thing that happened in comments, people were asking me, what do I recommend for project studios? And the concept is to me, it's simple. Maybe it's not simple to everybody else. Whatever, it doesn't matter what speakers you're using as long as they translate. So if you get the mix to sound exactly the way you want it to sound in your control room, and you take that mix and play it in someone's car or someone else's studio, and it's almost there, not exactly, but almost there, then your monitors are working for you. But when you start mixing with monitors and you don't hear the mid-range, it's all, top end and bottom end, and you don't hear the mid range, and then you listen to your mix someplace else, and the mid range is just all out of whack, or you have too much bass, or the top end is very harsh. Those monitors are doing you no good. So that's the whole thing. So as far as recommendations, I have a pair of 8351 Genelecs in front of me, and those things sound fantastic, but they are way out of a lot of people's budgets. But if you can afford those Genelecs, they sound fantastic to me, and they're very true. Another pair of speakers that I would recommend is the Questeds, the VS2108s. What's that guy? There's a big composer in Hollywood, and every single room has Questeds in there. And they sound very natural. I mean, one thing Roger Quested would always tell me about his speakers, if you make your mix sound good on these speakers, they're going to sound good every place else. And it's pretty much true. And that's pretty much true on these Genelecs too. And I realize it's in a higher price point. It's not the Project Studio price point. I've heard about Cali's. I was going to be a dealer at one point. They wanted me to buy a huge amount as an opening dealer. So I never really listened to them. So I don't know if people seem to like them, but I haven't heard them with my ears. The biggest advice I could give you is whatever speakers you're considering, listen to them at least in a room that you would be mixing in, or a quiet room, not a showroom at a Guitar Center or something like that. So you got to hear them. And then if they sound great to you and your mixes are translating, and that's the most important thing, your mixes are translating, then you got a winner. I did a video about the KRK speakers, the original ones that I had a pair of. And I found these pictures of the KRK 703s, which started the whole KRK craze. But I couldn't find a good set of pictures of the old ones. And these are the ones that I used to have. And you can see they're made differently than the ones that I had posted with the video. So there you go. You can see the bass ports are in a different place. And there's a left side and a right side, where later on they kind of made them exactly the same. You just put one on the left, one on the right, but they weren't specifically made for that. So that's the deal with these. Okay, hope you enjoy them. So I was reading in the comments about the KRK subject, and somebody said what I'm saying isn't entirely true in relationship to parts. He said Gibson moved on to V8 and Rocket lines and began manufacturing their own parts, where the profit margins were higher. And Keith, the original owner, his Focal and Cabase, I don't even know who that is or what that company is, that he was buying would cost more money. And the other thing that's interesting is he says Gibson and distributors were keen to let 6,000, 7,000, 9,000 and E7s die out. Hopefully people would move on to a newer option. Why would somebody move on to a newer option if you're not going to support the older option? I mean, it makes no sense at all. If I bought a car and they just said, we don't have parts for that anymore, but why don't you buy our new one? I'm not going to be buying that brand anymore. All they did was shoot themselves in the foot by doing something like that. And then he continues on. This person is saying that some producers got together and bought a bunch of drivers. Well, the speakers I had, the drivers weren't the issue. It was the electronics. And every time I called Gibson, they didn't know. They gave me the runaround. They didn't know if they had parts, it didn't have parts. I mean, it would have been simple enough for them to say, we don't make that speaker anymore and we don't have parts. But they were just annoyed with me calling them. So as far as not being exactly true, I don't buy that. And I didn't know Focal made the tweeters, even though they look like them. I don't know where you buy them. And this Cabase, however you say it, must be the woofers for them. I didn't know that either. And I know Keith, and he didn't. I called him and reached out to him, and he didn't give me any of that information. So when I see this kind of stuff, it's not entirely true. It is absolutely true. It's just people that, come in and say, hey, if you just did this, things would work. And the remark of, well, just move on and maybe you'll buy the newer option is just a bad way of doing business. So there, I'm going to post this, and it's easier for me to say things than it is for me to type. Okay. I also happen to mention KRK speakers. They're not that much better than, the blue skies that were in that one video that I saw. And you got to understand my history with KRK. I sold the first KRKs when they first came out, the 703s, which were a 7-inch woofer and an inverted tweeter. And they're very primitive. The cabinets weren't made very well. I mean, they were pointy on the edges, but it didn't matter. They sounded, fantastic. And they had that yellow cone that you start seeing them everywhere. They were passive monitors. They were about $900 for a pair. And I remember people coming in to listen to NS10s, and I'd put up the 703s, and they found the money to buy them. And then KRK came out with the 1002s, which was a 10-inch woofer, the inverted tweeter, and those things sounded fantastic. And then they came out with a 1303 three-way. I think it had a 13-inch woofer. It was some odd woofer with the same inverted tweeter. And they all were, it looks like they were all handmade, because they weren't all, the cabinets weren't really, nice and finished like the other speaker companies. So it looked like somebody was making them in a garage, but it didn't matter. Those things sounded really, really good. And the owner of the company, KRK, Keith, I think it's Klotzwater. I can't pronounce his name. But I knew him and talked to him directly, and really nice guy, real enthusiastic about his line. And at some point, also, I have to point out, when you got the KRKs, they made a left speaker and a right hand speaker. Now, you don't have to do that, but they were doing all these things just to, make sure that they were exactly the sound that they heard that they wanted to get out to the general public. And then at some point, KRK got sold, the whole company. Keith sold the company, and I think it's Gibson that bought them. And the last great speaker that they made was the E8. And this E8 was a two-way inverted tweeter, 8-inch woofer, but a long throw woofer, and the thing weighed a ton, so really solid. And I sold a good amount of those. They had, the first ones that came out with a polishing cloth, so they were this glossy black that looked really nice. And then they came out with a flat black one, just to cut down on the cost of making these things. They sounded really good, and you saw them all over the place, but Gibson didn't keep up with the parts. So as you start blowing up tweeters and blowing up woofers and blowing up amplifiers, things like that, you couldn't get any parts. And in fact, one of my clients that bought a pair from me, he just gave them to me. He says, I can't fix these, and I have no use for them, and they take up so much space. He gave them to me, and I go, all right, I'll figure out how to get it fixed. I could not. I got in touch with Gibson. They had no parts. They didn't know when they were going to get any, and it was kind of basically leave us alone. And I tried buying some parts off of eBay, and it wasn't all the whole package. So I gave those speakers away too. Now they have the whole KRK line, and it's something that's sold at the guitar centers and the box houses, and they're not great sounding. The attention to detail is not there, and they push them hard, but you basically see them in project studios. They're not revealing as much as they should be. So not as bad as I would say those some other speakers, but it's just not a speaker I would recommend. And I do see them every so often, all blown up, sitting in someone's closet. So that's my experience with the KRKs. If you could find those old KRKs, those things sounded fantastic. And those 703s were really great sounding speakers. So there's my little bit on the KRKs. Now, also, Keith has a new company. It's not called KRK. I think it's his last name, Design, Klotzwater Design. and he makes speakers. They're supposed to sound pretty good. I haven't heard any personally, and I haven't seen any out in a while. But I think he's been trying to raise money to get production going. But maybe they're out there now. But it's not as big of a system as it was before. But there you go. So back in 1995, Boyz II Men were on top of the world. They were burning up the charts. Everything in the top 10 either was them or something that they had touched. So everybody wanted a piece of them. I was working with them, putting Stone Creek Studios together and working very closely with all their studio projects. But like I said, everybody wanted a piece of them, and that meant manufacturers too. And Nate told me this story. Kurzweil wanted to do an endorsement deal with Boyz II Men. So they got all of them together, all four guys, and they took pictures of them with all the gear. And when they were done with going through all the pictures and doing the whole photo shoot and that, they said, okay, pick out what you guys would like, and we will have it shipped to you. And Nate, being Nate, Nate's a smart guy. He says, you know what? I'm just going to take this. This is what I'd like. I'm going to just box it up. I'm taking it with me right now. The other three guys said, oh, no, we'll tell you what you want and just ship it to us. Well, I don't know. What happened is Nate was the only person who got any gear from Kurzweil. They never shipped them any gear from that photo shoot or their endorsement. So they're pretty pissed about that. But Nate had this big grin on his face because he was smart enough to figure out that you take what they offer you and you take it right away because it's not going to get offered to you later and you have no recourse. So there's my Boyz II Men Kurzweil story. So I meet a lot of celebrities and famous people in that, and none of it phases me. My job is just to get whatever they need done and get out of there. But some people I have an incredible amount of respect for, and one person is Les Paul. I just think it's fascinating that he did what he did in his career. I mean, the musicianship was incredible, but all the things, the clever ways that he designed stuff and came up with by himself. So when he had passed away and his estate was auctioning off a lot of his gear, I thought, wow, it would be really great if I could, maybe pick up a guitar. And I registered for the auction. It was through Julian's, and marked the guitars that I was kind of interested in. And then there was some outboard gear that would look kind of interesting. And every single guitar went through the roof. I mean, it's the cheapest guitar. I think it was like $5,000 to $10,000, and then there was a surcharge of 28% on top of that, plus the shipping. So there was no way I was touching any of that stuff. It was just going way through the roof. So, but what I was lucky enough, I bought some of his outboard gear and I placed the picture so you guys could see it. And I don't care what it did. It belonged to Les Paul. I put it in a rack at my office next to me, and I just felt that mojo in my office. And it just was, I always was a student of design, and I was always interested in seeing how people design things. But I picked up a bunch of his outboard gear that was test stuff, and then some microphones. So that whole thing was about $4,000, and then the 28% was another $1,000, service fee. And then on top of that was another $1,500 to ship everything to me. But I got to say, they packed everything very nicely, wrapped them up in cloths and sent them out to me. So I had them for about 10 years, and everybody always loved seeing them. But I think one interesting thing is I sent pictures over to Doug Fern to see what he thought. And he identified each piece. And I said, what do you think this stuff's worth? He says, it's really not worth anything. I said, would you buy it? He said, oh, yeah. He says, it's Les Paul's gear. I would buy it. So same reaction. And then I tacked on the end some things I found of Les Paul's that I thought were interesting. So there you go. Not really a great story, but it's just interesting, some things that you come across. I did eventually sell all the gear as I didn't have any space for it because I was downsizing. But I sold it to a company called MAP, I think it's called. I'll put the link in the description. They buy historic pieces of gear. They're in, I think, Lansdale, Pennsylvania, and you can make an appointment and go and see the gear that they have. But I think they have like Frank Zappa's guitar amplifiers, and they have all kind of historic things there. And they bought all the Les Paul stuff, and I thought that was a good place for it to be so it could be displayed. So I'll put the link so you could check it out. This is about the Mackie A24 studio monitor. When they first came out, there was a big buzz about them. It was a two-way speaker, 8-inch woofer, tweeter, and it had a passive radiator on the back side of it. And they were reasonably priced. And we got them in at the music store because they were a Mackie dealer. And I remember when I came in, Jazzy Jeff came in and I showed him to him. And I played him some stuff on him. And he came to me, he says, "My God, George," he says, "there's too much bass in those speakers." And I thought that was the funniest thing. He's a rap star. I've been in his car when he's playing bass. I mean, your hair like vibrates because of the low frequencies. And it was too much bass in those 824s. I don't know whatever happened to them. They kind of faded away. I don't know if Mackie really makes any monitors anymore. But it was a big deal when they first came out. So passive radiator in the back, extra bottom end, and too much, according to a rap star. Another comment that I saw was someone had a problem with microphones just being out in the mic closet. The pictures I had posted up for that mic closet story, those were from Sigma Sound Studios. And if you know anything about Sigma, that place ran day in, day out, all the time. You had to book time 6 months ahead of time just to get time. And a lot of people would do that without a project just to get going. So those microphones didn't sit in that closet that long. They were just there more for organization. They were put there so people could count them and make sure everything was still there. And then they didn't sit long. But I understand the person's, he was saying it makes him cringe that they don't have a Ziploc bag over. But I mean, it'd be nice to put them right back into their cases. And most studios I see, they put their microphones back into their cases. The ones that they leave out, maybe you put over some kind of a cover. And that does make sense if you can do that. But if you're like Sigma, they didn't have barely time to breathe. And they had techs there all the time. There was watching things to make sure and testing things to make sure that they all worked up to the performance. I remember talking to somebody that was at Abbey Road Studios, and they were telling me that all their microphones and all their gear is constantly being tested to make sure it's all up to spec. So there is no problems with anything, and they just have a whole division for just taking care of that. And that's one of the things today. I don't know if there's budgets to afford to have a tech department in your studio. Most studios used to have that, just a department. They have workbenches and all the test gear and all that. So anything that goes wrong, it goes in there. It gets looked at, repaired. And if it's not being looked at or repaired, they're monitoring things to make sure they're up to spec, because that's part of owning a studio, is making sure everything works properly. But I understand what the person was saying about putting covers on microphones when you can. And I guess the key word is when you can. So just wanted to respond to that. So this is a story about selling a Rocktron Model X console to Teddy Riley. And this console was a pretty slick console when it first came out, but its limitation was at 48K, so it was digital in, digital out, and Rocktron made it. And it was a pretty interesting control surface, and it had this big computer that went with it. I sold the first one to Manchester Craftsman Guild in Pittsburgh, PA, and they were very happy with it. They were using D88s, recording through their Apogee 88,000s, and then digitally, they would do all their mixing through this console. But Teddy Riley wanted to try one. So I arranged to send it down to Virginia Beach, and he tried it and he loved it. And he said, "This is great." And he wanted to, get a lease on it. And I said, "All right, I'll arrange for the lease." So I told him ahead of time, I said, "Oh, keep in mind with a lease, once you sign the lease papers, it doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to the lease company until you pay them off. So I can't take something back once you sign the lease papers." So he said, yeah, I got it. And it wasn't Teddy I was talking to his studio manager, the guy who fired Serban, which was a really big mistake. But anyways, so got the console to him. He signed the leasing papers, and it was only like a day after that Teddy's manager gets in touch with me. He says, "Yeah, we want to return the console." I go, "Well, sorry, you can't return the console because I don't own it anymore. The leasing company owns it. So you'd have to talk to the leasing company, and they're not going to just take it back." And he argued with me up and down about how I needed to take it back, and it was bad for business. I said, "Well, it has nothing to do with me," and I explained this to you ahead of time. That console now belongs to the lease company, and you're buying it from the lease company, not from me. The lease company pays me once once they got all the paper signed. So it wasn't a good situation, and I'm always out to help people out. But when you're dealing with a lease company, there's nothing you can do about that. But he was pretty mad. I don't know whatever became of that console. But that company eventually, Rocktron, sold the Model X console division to Matrix Halo, and Matrix Halo tried to make it work. And those guys are some geniuses, and they were having problems with getting parts and things like that. So it just died off, and I think it's super rare to find that console anyplace anymore. I'll see if I can find a picture and post it. But that was my dealing with Teddy on that console. And not happy about the situation, but there was nothing I could do about it.